be a rookie in the game, but I've been integrating. We about autonomy, dog. We ain't trying to integrate.
Pull up.
Man, we ain't trying to integrate.
Pull up.
Bang, bang, bang.
Pull up. Man, Blaze, boy, set a fire. Carnival style. Wish I had a torch right now. Burn fire to the thing, you heard? Burn. You heard? We in the studio. We live. MusicMediaLounge.com, you dig? It was just Carnival weekend, and Indigenous people's holiday at the same time. It used to be Columbus Day, but they're gonna make it for us now. We gotta recognize who we is. So we recognize this weekend Carnival, a whole bunch of things going on. You know what I mean? So wherever you at, you celebrating that way in your culture or way in your Indigenous people fashion. You know what I'm saying? If you dressing up with the feathers this weekend and all the different fashions, you know what I'm saying? Or you know what I mean? Just chilling in your backyard barbecuing, you dig? Whatever it might be. Shout out to you, you dig? We got this panel discussion tonight, the Aboriginal panel discussion. Got a couple topics we're gonna be talking about. Obviously, I got some guests pulling up on me. You know what I mean? And shout out to the panel ahead of time that's pulling up tonight. Some couldn't make it because again, it's Indigenous holiday. So we know people celebrating and doing activities throughout the different states. You know what I mean? Shout out to Philly. Shout out my man Tavis Sanders, NDU.org. You know what I mean? What they doing up there in Philly this weekend. You know what I mean? Obviously, that's what's up. You know what I mean? Obviously, down here we got Carnival. And shout out to Miss Sherry. She just came from, a cultural situation up there in the Carolinas with different tribes and stuff. So we go, let y'all know people doing things in this time frame. We waking up doing the cultural thing. That's a beautiful thing. You dig? You ready, guy? Shout out to Guy the Green on the boards. Shout out to Baron P in the building. Your boy Mac Gaither. I'm your host. Some Grand Maroon in this shit. You're just having a good time vibing. Okay, we're gonna pull up. We can wait for pull up. Okay, we almost there. We got 3 out of the 4. What's up, Ish? Peace.
Peace and blessings to you, Brother Mac. How you doing? Peace to the Thomas Party.
Right.
How everybody doing?
Doing all right, man. Thank you for pulling up on the party tonight for this discussion, man.
Oh, yeah. Them sounds was banging right there. Yeah, that was real hot. I like that.
Appreciate that, man. Rob, what's up, Rob? What's popping?
What's good, family? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
all
sir.
Right. Happy Indigenous Peoples Weekend, brother. To everybody,
Indeed.
to all of us.
Indeed.
You know what I'm saying?
Indeed.
What's good?
It's this weekend, so we got a lot of bills going on, but this weekend hit, and I'm like, it's the weekend where I got to go ahead and give attention to the weekend. You know what I mean? It just take precedence. You know what I mean? Culturally speaking. What's up, Professor? What's up with you tonight, man?
Peace. What's up, fam?
Peace to you. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
I appreciate you for sliding on us tonight too, man. Got different people in every different area. I think issue out there in Nevada, in Vegas.
That's right. Yep, here in Vegas.
You know what I mean? I know, Rob, you in Georgia, right? If I'm right, you live from Georgia?
Yes, sir. Atlanta, GA, brother.
Atlanta is right in the building. Ish, you in New York, right? Am I right? Ish, it's a Ish. See, don't get me wrong tonight. It's a Ish. I'm sorry. Professor, are you in New York?
Oh, nah, Oklahoma.
Oklahoma? Okay, but you sound like you from up north, so I just took that.
Yeah, I'm a New Yorker, but I left the city a while ago.
I got it. See, once you got that accent though, it's gonna travel with you, and you're just gonna get hit with that no matter what. Don't be mad at me. You know what I'm saying?
And outside of New York, nobody understands it. They think you're aggressive.
Shit, that's real. I ain't even from New York. I was born in Virginia, and my people all from the South. You know what I'm saying? South for me, where he from, Georgia area. And goddamn it, they say I talk aggressive just because I was born in Virginia. And I'm like, they be like, you from New York? I'm like, no, I was born in Virginia, but I was never in New York in my life as far as being raised. It's all good though. It's all good though. I try to keep it kosher. I had to learn to tone myself down. I learn, fight too at the same time. Yeah. Shoot, I'm waiting for my man Chito to pull up too out of Louisiana. You know what I mean? Give him a shout out. He should be here soon for this discussion. And again, shout out to Tavis and Michael Hampton that also want to kind of get involved in this conversation, and others too. It just, this last minute thing kind of spurred a couple of things I've heard on platforms. Say, you know what, this weekend I want to have a topic conversation with about certain things dealing with our people. You know what I mean? And you know, Ish, you've been dealing with some political things. We're gonna get to that. I'm gonna let you present that in a minute. You know what I'm saying? And obviously, me and Professor were in a clubhouse room last week or so, and some folk were saying some things that's addressed with the topic of, you know, ancient Egypt and Jerusalem. You know what I mean? And that was interesting. There's Chito Tupac. What's up? Can you hear me, Chito?
I hear you loud and clear. You can hear me?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I hear you. Thank you for joining this, man. Shout out to you, by the way. You know what I mean?
For sure. What's happening, everybody on the panel? Was popping.
Peace.
Peace and blessings, fam.
And I wanted to be diverse. I wanted this discussion to be diverse. I did this with the individuals I wanted to get on the panel discussion. I mean, because I don't want no echo chamber, right? I think all you men would stand on what you stand on in your historical narratives to stand on the topics that we're going to be speaking on. You know what I mean? Sometimes you get people that might just go with the flow. You know what I mean? But we could be respectable from our positions and not disrespect each other on the panel, agreeing to disagree on certain topics. And it's something I felt it needed to be discussed in a public manner where gentlemen can do this. You know what I mean? All right. I just want to make sure I say that first before we get passionate. So everybody knows in the audience, in the chat, you know what I mean? We might be passionate about our, you know what I mean, thoughts on things, but it's no disrespect to nobody on the panel or any position that's anybody in the chat actually too. Just going, you know, try to clear some things up on some things we hear. You know what I mean? So I want to hear some first topic of the night. Matter of fact, I want to play a joint from Malcolm. You know, Malcolm, I always he Aboriginal, right? I'm telling you, I got to give it to this man in the '60s because he said it back then, and I think, you know what I mean, it fits a resonance with me, especially the autonomous party with trying to be autonomous, as his position was for us Aboriginal people at that time coming forward. Now, when it comes to tribal and national and different situations of our genealogies and the origin of where they came from, that's a whole nother thing with your tree, right? Genealogy plays a role to that. Can we get that, Malcolm X? And we're going right after that, we're gonna go straight to the topics tonight. Just want to give Malcolm a shout out.
Why should the black man in America concern himself, since we've been away from the African continent for 400 years, 300 or 400 years? Why should we concern ourselves? What impact does what happened to them have upon us? Number one, first you have to realize that up until 1959, Africa was dominated by the colonial powers, and by the colonial powers of Europe having complete control over Africa, they projected the image of Africa negatively. They projected Africa always in a negative light. Jungles, savages, cannibals, nothing civilized. And naturally, it was so negative until it was negative to you and me. And you and I began to hate it. We didn't want anybody to tell us anything about Africa, and much less call us an African. And in hating Africa and hating the African, we ended up even hating ourselves without even realizing it. Because you can't hate the roots of a tree and not hate the tree. You can't hate your origin and not end up hating yourself. You can't hate Africa and not hate yourself. And you show me one of these people over here who have been thoroughly brainwashed, who has a negative attitude toward Africa, and I'll show you one that has a negative attitude toward himself. You can't have a negative attitude toward yourself, a positive attitude toward yourself, and a negative attitude toward Africa at the same time. To the same degree that your attitude, that your understanding of an attitude toward Africa becomes positive, you'll find that your understanding of and your attitude toward yourself will also become positive. And this is what the white man knows. So they very skillfully made you and me hate our African identity, our African characteristics. And you know yourself that we have been a people who hated our African characteristics. We hated our hair. We hated the shape of our nose. We wanted one of those long dog-like noses, you know. Yeah. We hated the color of our skin. Hated the blood of Africa that was in our veins. And in hating our features and our skin and our blood, why we had to end up hating ourselves. And we hated ourselves. Our color became to us a chain. We felt that it was holding us back. Our color became to us like a prison which we felt was keeping us confined, not letting us go this way or that way. And we felt that all of these restrictions were based solely upon our color, and the psychological reaction to that would have to be that as long as we felt imprisoned or chained or trapped by black skin, black features, and black blood, that skin and those features and that blood that was holding us back automatically had to become hateful to us. And it became hateful to us. It made us feel inferior. It made us feel inadequate. It made us feel helpless. And when we fell victim to this feeling of inadequacy or inferiority or helplessness, we turned to somebody else to show us the way. We didn't have confidence in another black man to show us the way, or black people to show us the way. In those days, we didn't. We didn't think a black man could do anything but play some horn, some sound, and make you happy with some songs. And in that way, in serious things, where our food, clothing, and shelter was concerned, and our education was concerned, we turned to the man. We never thought in terms of bringing these things into existence for ourselves. We never thought in terms of doing things for ourselves because we felt helpless. And what made us feel helpless was our hatred for ourselves. One of the things that made the Black Muslim movement grow was its emphasis upon things African. This was the secret to the growth of the Black Muslim movement. African blood, African origin, African culture, African ties. And you'd be surprised. We discovered that deep within the subconscious of the black man in this country, he's still more African than he is American. He thinks that he's more American than African because the man is jiving him and the man is brainwashing him every day, telling him, you're an American, you're an American. Man, how could you think you're an American and you have never had any kind of American treat over here? You have never. 10 men can be sitting at a table eating, dining. And I can come and sit down where they're dining. They're dining. I got a plate in front of me, but nothing is on it. Because all of us are sitting at the same table, are all of us diners? I'm not a diner until you let me dine. Then I become a diner. Just being at the table with others who are dining doesn't make me a diner. And this is what you got to get in your head here in this country. Just because you're in this country doesn't make you an American. And no, you got to go farther than that before you can become an American. You got to enjoy the fruits of Americanism. And you haven't enjoyed those fruits. You've enjoyed the thorns. You've enjoyed the thistles, but you have not enjoyed the fruits. No, sir. So I point these things out, brothers and sisters, so that you and I will know the importance in 1965 of being in complete unity with each other, harmony with each other, and not letting the man maneuver us into fighting one another. I say that again, that I'm not a racist. I don't believe in any form of segregation or anything like that. I'm for the brotherhood of everybody, but I don't believe in enforcing brotherhood upon people who don't want it. As long as we practice brotherhood among ourselves, and then others who want to practice brotherhood with us, we practice it with them also. We're for that. But I don't think that we should run around trying to love somebody who doesn't love us. Thank you.
Peace. So I had to get that in because I think even if in 65, right? Because after 65, in 68, right before, everything's happened with the man, he did travel a little bit. He came around, he started saying Aboriginal. You know what I'm saying? He said that after that speech right there. Because they give you a time frame, 65. Ish, what you think about that? I just wanted to ask everybody what you thought about what he said back then in 1965 real quick tonight. Because of how he's talking, how people are fighting today on Clubhouse. You know what I mean? What you thought about that?
Yeah, I think Brother Malcolm was true to his message as far as representing the Nation of Islam and the overall philosophy of it. As I'm looking at it right now, he's looking at it from a perspective and a viewpoint of that African identity, and he's counteracting the hatred, what's been instilled in the people. So in speaking the language and stuff, he was definitely representing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad properly in 65.
I appreciate you giving your honest opinion. Professor Issa, I'm coming down like this.
Peace, everybody. In retrospect on Malcolm X, when he was with the Nation of Islam, I think he was at his best afterwards. I think he established some things for others to come afterwards and build off of. He was a Pan-Africanist. And
right.
As we look at today, maybe at that time, Pan-Africanism might have went somewhere if the people in this country, who are Americans, the original Americans, had they established a provisional government in order to link government to government with African governments. That never happened. He was assassinated, and a lot of the leaders that came afterwards were assassinated or jailed. So the whole Pan-African concept today in 2022, I think, is a dead end. That you know, he was talking about the corporate state of America that's controlled by the European descendants of colonizers, but the just solely people who's been here for centuries before Columbus came over here. Most of the people on the panel, I believe, is descendants in some way or shape or form of those people who's already here, even if we're mixed with people who came afterwards. So I think from that perspective, the words of Malcolm have to be taken for the context that he put them in. At one point, he did said that people here were Aborigines, or I think he used Aborigines, not Aboriginals. But as far as the Pan-African concept today in 2022, I wouldn't agree with him, only because there hasn't been a provisional government set up, and with most people are still asleep. You got, I think they say about 45 million so-called black people, and maybe a few million others. A lot of them are not what we call politically astute. They're still caught up in a system that was established by the corporate American state.
What?
So that's my my opinion on it.
Okay, Rob, what's your thoughts on that, man? Real quick, not real quick. Take your time and speak your thoughts.
Hey, bro, thinking about Malcolm X, like both of the brothers just said, for the era that he was speaking for, he was talking about Africa and Africans. Really, when I think of that from that era, it's just people talking about black folks or the so-called Negroes. So, coming out of school of thought of all people came from Africa, because that was that train of thought at that period of time. I wonder how he would have felt about the kind of information that we discuss nowadays. You know what I mean? The kind of information the kind of information that we have right now. Because, back then it was just going on, what he learned in school, and the school system taught you what they taught you. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's anything wrong with what he said. I just understand that some of the ways that he thought at that period of time was based off of what he knew. You don't know what you don't know. You know what I'm saying? So if he had the information and had the kind of documentation and knew about all the architect, all the stuff that we know and discuss today, his thought might have been a little more broad than just to say African. But I don't think there's anything wrong with him saying African, other than, we know better than that now. It's not just African, it's global, So that's my input on
I appreciate that. Pa, what's up, man? What's your thoughts on it?
that.
All right, I'm going against the wave.
That's what I want.
From me knowing, dealing with the Nation of Islam, in their lessons, they spoke about the Aboriginal people over here supposed to be in the land of the wilderness, because they say this is supposed to be the poor part of the planet Earth. You know what I'm saying? But we know that the Americas was not the poor planet, part of the planet Earth. You know what I'm saying? And they know they had the Aboriginals over here. So, I mean, the information was already there before he even said, because if I'm not mistaken, was in the lessons and everything created in the 1930s with the Nation of Islam?
20s,
1930s.
10s.
They say late 20s.
Late 20s, 1930s. Yeah, so they knew about the Aborigines, you know what I'm saying? But their main focus was basically talking about the Asiatic black man, But we know, for those who actually studied Moorish science, that Noble Drew Ali said about the Asiatic, but somebody came along and put the Asiatic black man. So I that's some things that you want to raise an eyebrow to, you know what I'm saying? But anyway,
Asiatic, Asiatic.
Yeah,
I like how you said Asiatic, because that goes against Africa, right, y'all? I mean, Asia is a place, like that's a region. I mean, I always point to Asia. Did y'all ever catch that back in the day? I mean, go ahead, though, Pop. Go ahead. Finish your thought. My fault.
So I mean, if Noble Dry Lee said, "Come here, y'all Asiatics," and then then you had those that came after him say, "Asiatic black man," what Noble Dry Lee said about there was no black man or no Ethiopian or wherever that was taught in the Moorish science teachings. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But to speak about the Aborigines, you know what I'm saying? Which once again, that was in the Nation of Islam's teaching when they said about those that was in the poor planet of the earth. You know what I'm saying? So, that shouldn't been anything new in the 1960s. That's like 30 years after the Nation of Islam, because
Word.
you're in the 1930s, and then he came in 1965. So that's 35 years after Elijah Muhammad, which he still got to sit under the feet of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. You know what I'm saying? But at his time and everything, yes, he knew, but certain things he wasn't privy to say, because remember, they put him under a gag order, and then after he broke away from the Nation of Islam, that's when he started speaking.
I heard some stuff about that too. Since you said that, I mean, there's some things out there. And we this kind of discussion ain't about him. But I just wanted, I played it. Y'all hear? I wanted to hear y'all thoughts real quick about it. You know what I'm
So
saying?
yeah, that was
Now,
good that he said it at that time, but did he elaborate more and expound it more on it?
he
You
did
know what
after
I'm
that.
saying?
He did
So,
though. Right.
you know,
I think his evolution didn't get to his peak. To be honest with y'all, like you said, he died. He got killed. You know what I'm saying? I think
yeah, he
after
got
he went and seen
assassinated.
some things, by the time
Yeah,
1968, when he started to say Aboriginal, we don't really get to see the evolution of that situation. Does everybody agree with that before we move on? Did we like when we
yeah,
hear him say
Yeah.
Aboriginal?
yeah,
Do we not think that that's when he's evolving, but we don't get to see the evolution of his evolution
yeah,
with that
He didn't
terminology for us?
he didn't get to fully study. He only got so far before his time, before he clocked out. You know,
Right.
if he had
If I
more
could,
time to study, he might have got a little deeper.
if I could add on to that, Honorable Elijah Muhammad, a message to the black man in America, and one of the chapters, he calls so-called black people Aborigines in that book. Um, Also, in Malcolm X was assassinated. Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated too when he started going down that road. When he was talking about the blank check and this is your own land. When he started
Exile
talking
in
like
your
that,
own land.
yeah. So he was assassinated too. So both of them giants um, really never got to really uh, fully develop that aspect of their teachings.
Ish.
I wouldn't say that Martin Luther King was assassinated. I wouldn't say that, because brother Malcolm X, he already did the video talking about the bourgeoisie. You know what I'm saying? Talking about the 6 people who was actually paid almost $1 million a piece. You know, so that's a whole nother thing right there. So
Yeah, hold
I
on now.
mean, if you was paid $1 million to take over the grassroots movement, right, by John F. Kennedy and the Carlyle Group and all that there, I wouldn't say that's assassination. I say you knew what you was getting. Can I curse on YouTube? No, I
Yeah,
can't.
we here now. We
He knew
live. We live.
he knew he was getting his gluteus maximus into. So I wouldn't say it was assassination.
Okay, you got your shoot. However the case might be. I mean, he got murdered. I mean, he was not.
Yeah, he
He
got
didn't kill
murdered.
himself. Okay, we gonna
Yeah,
say it. Keep it simple. Ish, what you thoughts
yeah.
before we go on to the first topic outside of this?
Yeah, I would definitely say that, Malcolm wasn't complete with his journey. He was killed in 65. So by him, that this was, in
It
like the
was. Yeah,
last year of
right,
his
right.
life. Yeah, he was killed in 65.
I'm
But,
tripping.
in that, he did kind of mention that having a seat at the table doesn't make you a diner. The analogy
Mm,
is actually quite brilliant. He's very good with his analogies. And in doing that, what he's really explaining is that you're not applying your rights as a citizen to sit there and say what you have as far as being included, as far as what your identity is. He's really telling you that you think that you're a part of this system, or you think that you're an equal citizen, but you're not. So he's explaining that he's not, that there's still work to do. And I think that's really ultimately the steps that he was taking in bringing in a broader view, his meetings at the United Nations, You could just tell by the tone of what he was doing, you know. But his mission was cut short, unfortunately.
You know, since you said that, I'm glad you corrected me because sometimes there's a lot of dates we deal with, so I ain't gonna act like I'm always perfect. 60, I said 68. You just corrected me. You said 65. That is when Malcolm X
That's no
was
problem. Yeah,
really.
King got killed in
Yeah,
'68. Yeah, that's no problem because I
yeah.
was like
I be
1 years old when
messing.
he
I
got
mean,
killed.
I
Yeah,
be messing up. You know what I mean? So don't mind me. You just told your age at the same time, but it's cool though. Peace to you. You know what I mean? Getting older, brother. Your birthday just passed. You just had a birthday, ain't it? Did you
I
just
did.
celebrate
Just
Earth
made
Strong?
55 this week. Yep, yep.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. Shout out to you. You're Earth Strong. You heard me?
Appreciate it. Thank
Okay.
you.
No pressure. So at the same time, now we're gonna come back around to the topics for the night because it's really want to just because how Malcolm said Aboriginal. You see I wasn't being biased. I played a clip where he's talking about Africans, right? So you just said 65, same year, right? So it's like we're seeing Aboriginal being used, we're seeing African being used, right? So it's now the Aboriginal conversation about America being the ancient old world. I want to go there first. I want to ask you all your opinions on this topic of the ancient old world and people using ancient Egypt as this placeholder. I mean, I know we've all read documentation from Masonic documentation to Rosicrucian documentation. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to hide nothing when it comes to this competition because just where people are getting it from my understanding, unless they're getting it from somewhere else. You know what I mean? If someone has something different, please let me know. You know what I mean? Because I know this was something attributed to. But still, with the sources being shown and I've gone through, you're getting terms and people are saying, oh, this is ancient Egypt. You know what I mean? This is where Jerusalem is. You know what I'm saying? And it's like geographically, I know there's some maps even put out there, but we ain't really like correlating the history with the same situation in these journeys of these people that, are we dealing with the book historically to understand what region they're talking about them in? Or are we just saying the book's just a make believe book to where, okay, it could have happened anywhere on the planet? You know what I'm saying? So really, I wanted to ask first, um, Ish, then we're gonna go back down. You know what I'm saying? So Ish, what's your thoughts on ancient Egypt being in the Americas?
I think you'll find some correlations of some things as far as, of course, we know like the oldest mummies, are here from this land here. So how the Egyptians got it, well, doesn't matter how they got it. They got it after the Americas. You have the structures that predate, pyramid structures over there. You have them over here. Regarding the term Egypt, of course, that's a Greek term. Of course, the archaeology and anthropology takes us older than those terms that are being used over there. So it's really not going to apply. I think there was an exchange that took place when you do think about things like the cocaine mummies that you find over there, when you know that something's indigenous over here. So there was some type of an ancient exchange of knowledge and information that took place. But I would not say per se that, this is ancient Egypt. I think the correlations that you do find are just geographical, and you might find some things that are kind of similar, but no, I don't find any kind of basis of calling this quote unquote ancient Egypt. I think there's a lot of things here that predate what you call Egypt, and I do think that we were the predecessor in many things on this land here. That's my take on it, sir.
I appreciate that. Issa, I'm gonna let you go ahead and come next, and then Rob, and then Pop.
Yeah, I kind of concur with Ishmael. Is people use Egypt as a placeholder because this evidence it was a great civilization, but the Americas is distinct. But I want to preface by saying I do subscribe to a theory that at one point in time in ancient civilization was intertwined worldwide. We have the Canary currents on the Atlantic Ocean, and we have Pacific currents that take you from like Hawaii and Polynesian islands that you'll make it over here to South America. So as far as trade was concerned, and we're talking about sailing on boats for trade purposes, I think there was international trade going on at the time in ancient civilizations. Um, to say I don't you I won't say Egypt was it's not ancient Egypt. I don't subscribe to that. Um, where there travelers from Egypt that made it over here, I believe is I've seen some evidence that that's possible. but those could have just been like merchants coming over, set up a little merchant base. But I would say that the civilization of the Americas was unique to the Americas. And I haven't seen a great deal of evidence to say that it was foreign dominated at that point in time. I think it was its own civilization that had trade with other civilizations across the world. And I'm speaking in terms of 12, maybe 15,000, 12,000 BCE until not too long before the coming of Columbus.
Okay. Rob, you next.
Well, I have to say, all of the base the base culture of ancient Kemet that we call in Egypt, I would definitely think that it started here because we have it all and it's older. And not to mention the fact that not only do we have it and it's older, we have more of it. Even over there, they have temples of people that came from here to there. I mean, my man mentioned the cocaine mummies. Like, that is all evidence that yes, we did have a global network because uh, Teotihuacan and Giza and the Cheyenne pyramids over in China, all of the Belt of Orion, they all, that's not an accident. You know what I'm saying? So that lets you know somebody with some real science put this together. You know what I mean? It wasn't an accident. It's not just America and Egypt and Africa. It's in Asia, and I bet you if they could really study Antarctica and other parts of the planet, they just won't tell us about. It's bigger than that. You know what I mean? So it seems like we will be the oldest, though. I have to be honest. All of our stuff seems to be older. Whatever name they was using. Whatever name they was calling it. What's the book? Man, what's that book? I know some of y'all probably read it. When the Rocks Cry Out. Oh boy,
Oh, yeah,
did a
Horace
good
Butler.
job. He was, he's really into the Bible. Yeah, he's really into the Bible and Christianity. I'm not religious, so only part about it that I cared about was the artifacts and the structures. And I have to say, a lot of what he said in that book made sense. Like Peru being ancient Jerusalem, and they was talking about Columbus coming here looking to take Jerusalem back. You know what I mean? And when you start talking about places like Peru, like nothing on this planet is older than anything in Peru, man. Peru is the oldest everywhere. Like they can't even tell you how old Peru is. They can't tell you how it was built, who built it, and there ain't no other place on the planet is old or as detailed and hard as that. So yeah, man, I think the base for the ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt probably started here. Whatever name we want to call it, I think that the origin of the culture came from right here.
Okay, bet. Pa.
Well, I'll say this, right? And like I said earlier today with the prelude before the show, there's no way you're going to tell me that you're going to build a monolithic structure that's gigantic and then go to Africa and build a small ass pyramid. Things don't go like that. We have a saying, either you go big or you go to fuck home. So why you will build something large and then go and build something small? I wouldn't. No. And then you brought up Horace Butler. Dealing with that, if you was to deal with the Biblios Heliotext, they said that dealing with the Egyptians, or who became known as Mizraim or the Mizraite, right? But we know that dealing with the papyrus of Ani, they say they came from the mountain of the moon, right? Which is down there by Uganda and Kenya. So if that's where they say the origin of the birthplace were, and you go through Ethiopia, Nubia, Sudan, and then Egypt, but y'all forgetting about the pyramids that's in Nubia. And those pyramids is not the pyramids of the Americas. See, a grand architect don't never change his design. You know what I'm saying? The design is still the same. When you go and you look in South America, you will see that all of those pyramids have step casings. Every last one of them. And a matter of fact, like I said before that, dealing with the mounds, right? You can look at the mound that's right there in St. Louis, right? And you can see how that mound plateau is made when you have a flat top and then you have the tiki on top of that. So that predated the pyramids down there in Mexico or South America, because now you have mounds, just like my cousin Turtle said. You know, when you're dealing with La Venta, right? You don't have no pyramid down there because that's marshy land, and you're not gonna have no heavy ass stones sitting on marshy land because that shit was fucking sink. You know, so to say that, you know, that they was the ones that taught the Egyptians, I have to disagree with that. Because even with their masonry is totally different from the South American masonry.
Yo, Pa,
And
since you said that, hold on. Since you said that, right? I remember, matter of fact, it's the first time I met you. We was where? Louisiana, Poverty Point, correct? Isn't that the first time I met you physically? I met you at a powwow for the Washington. How long ago was this? How long ago was this?
that was in 2010.
2010. That's right. So you remind me of my dates. You know what I'm saying? So you know, brother Joe, we went to the campus. LSU was on the campus doing archaeology and everything at Poverty Point.
No,
Right?
that was Morehead. That was Morehead University out of Minnesota.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, whoever was on, they were on there doing the archaeology while we were there, right? They brother Joe, the Empress's son, said that this was the first masonry school over here where Poverty Point was.
Go ahead.
And when he said that, it was interesting because, you know, you got the mound that's right there is a bird mound that we went to. It's not no regular mound. It's an effigy. It's literally
It's an awful,
it's literally an effigy. People think you're standing on a regular little hilltop. No, you're sitting on top of a effigy, like how you're standing on top of a serpent mound or something. And it's the snake in the ground in Ohio. You know what I mean? And you don't even know it. It's crazy. I just wanted to like, that's predating Egypt and Kemet as well, correct? The effigy mounds of the bird and the serpent being made out of the earth.
And it predates the pyramids down there in South America too.
Yeah, North America, Mississippi, right?
No, I'm talking about down there in South America.
I'm saying, but the Mississippi area where the mounds are in Louisiana and all that area is older than what we're talking about in Mexico. That's what I'm saying. Like in the all right, it goes from north to south in this situation. You know what I mean? So with that being said, from what I learned from back then, these people kind of confirmed that back when I seen it, and I went to Louisiana and showed that. I was like, oh, okay, I get it now, because when I figure out where I was standing on top of, it's not like going to one of those mounds and you just see look like a hill. You feel me? This is a bird mound they are excavating from. Now where the stadium is the Gulf of Mexico. So this whole situation now is like, oh, wait a second, you got to think differently of this whole area when you understand that archaeology and what they're doing. So when people say that this is Jerusalem, I'm like, so how would Poverty Point fit into the Jerusalem narrative or the Egyptian narrative?
It doesn't.
Like, when this is predating all of that, why aren't these people going to Poverty Point if they are out of Jerusalem or Egypt? Because that was like, I don't understand how that could even make sense. I'll just be trying to understand that. Can people be like, go ahead.
Hey,
I just want to make sure I put
can
that
I interject real fast?
Go ahead, Rob. We having a conversation about the topic.
I mean, part of what you just said. Well, first thing, you know, when I brought up Horace Butler, he said Peru was Jerusalem. That's South America. But now, when we're talking about these pyramids, their dating of the pyramids can't be accurate And the reason why I'm saying that is based off of the pyramid that's underwater by Cuba. And they saying that whoever built that would have had to build it 100,000 years ago, and that is nowhere near as big as Teotihuacan, Giza, or the Cheyenne Pyramid. So these pyramids are really a lot older than the dates that they're giving us now. So when you say the mounds, and no doubt the mounds are old and ancient and everything, but we can't really. I mean, if we're going to base it off what they told us, then yeah, the mounds are older because the mounds are supposed to be a couple thousand years older than the pyramids. But if we go off of what's logical, if we got underwater pyramids in the ocean, and that's not the only one, that's just the one over here. We got one off the coast of Africa and one off the coast of Asia too. Man, we don't have the real dates for these pyramids, and these pyramids are bro, the energy centers, especially these big ones like Teotihuacan and Giza. These ain't just pyramids. You know what I'm saying? They even today they still put off a certain amount of electricity to this day up the whole East Coast, Atlantic coast, and of Americas. So we gotta be careful with those dates, y'all. Like I mean, we all listen to what they say things are, but you also got to do a little logical thinking too. You know what I'm saying? And that's
Well,
all I wanted to jump in on.
Okay.
well,
Hold
dealing
on,
with
Paul. Hold on, Paul.
tribal.
Hold on, Paul. Before you
All
do
right,
that, I want to make sure everybody get their piece in. Ish, is anything you want
all
to say
right,
about what you hear right now? Everybody get involved in this conversation.
I did see a message that Brother TurtleGang would like to join us,
Oh,
and
he's coming.
I would
He's
still like
coming.
to have
I'm
an
gonna let him come
explanation
up.
of how the cocaine mummies existed, if there was no exchange that took place.
Right, I got you. We're gonna get into all this. And I seen it in the chat.
It was definitely an
And I seen him
exchange.
earlier. I
Yeah.
seen him earlier talking with Pa. So we're gonna definitely invite that. I don't want it to be an echo chamber. I want this conversation to be in that manner diverse for us to really exchange this information this way, dealing with these indigenous different groups of people. So
Well, were there any
what you about to
other
say, Pa?
theories of how that took place? Is my question.
I'm still open. That's why I'm not gonna act like I have a understanding of where the exchange of, because it has to be ancient. You know what I'm saying? In my mind, it has to be ancient. It's obviously previous to 15th century AD. You know what I mean? I mean, we know that much. You know what I mean? So somebody's doing something, and we know the pyramids are older than just even in the time frame of what we would call the ADs. You know what I mean? Before Christ was born, either. You know what I mean? So them pyramid and everything that's being built from that time frame and the exchange that had to be happening for that time frame, in my opinion. So you know what I mean? That's how I mean in my logic of it. You know what I'm saying? Now, how I can say it happened, I can't tell you that. I don't know. Because how did they get it? If like you said, if the flower plant cocaina is from here, right? If it's natural to here, how they get it over there, right? Is the question. And I don't know. It has to be something. It can't just magically appear unless they had it over there and we don't know about it. Somebody got to be saying something to me, right?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely indigenous to the Americas, absolutely, and it did
All right.
walk
So I want to
over
make
there.
sure I ain't tripping.
Right,
Paul,
right.
Paul, what were you about to say?
all right, brother Ishmael. Maybe I can clarify and answer your question. If you've been a friend of mine since 2012. I don't know what happened. My Facebook page was getting closed and cut off and everything, but I actually spoke about that. And I even showed the video where they showed the Mayan going to Egypt and they had a Mayan calendar in one of the Egyptian temples. So in order for them to get the cocaine, remember the priests in them was the ones that was responsible for the cocaine. Okay, that's what they use to stuff the American mummies with. And not only that, they also use tar, right, to solidify the body as well after they go ahead on and stuff it. So
Okay.
for that priest from the Mayan went over there in exchange with the priests of Egypt. Just anybody just couldn't get cocaine like talking about it because that was in the hands of the priest. So yes, it
Okay.
was exchange.
Can you give me a
And
time frame, Pa, since you are
That
explaining
that
that? Can you
time
give us a
that
time
time
frame?
frame that time frame when you looking at it, you are looking at the time right around Zorza. around Emperor Zorza time. I mean, King Zorza, the pharaoh, around Zorza time.
What dynasty is that? I
Yeah,
ain't gonna front.
I forgot
I ain't got
what
it, you know.
dynasty that was, but it was an early dynasty. That was an
Early
early
dynasty.
dynasty. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, shout out to
Oh.
that Uber service by the Mayans. Shout out to them doing them deliveries door to door.
Yeah, they was the Colombians, you heard me? The modern day Colombians.
Door dashing, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
You know what
what you
I'm
need?
saying?
How you need it?
Come
You
on,
heard?
Tony. Come on.
I'm
Yeah,
coming. But for real,
and everybody was like, whoa. Because
that's crazy.
Coconina is medicine, you know what I'm saying? And
Right.
the priests and it was medicine men. So that's what because they wore leopard skin, and it's like the Egyptians they wore jaguar. They wore they wore the leopard, and over here we wore the jaguar.
That's
so
priest
there was
attire,
priests.
that's right.
That's priest attire, they medicine men. So but hey, you ain't hear from me. I'm just somebody just trying to be nobody, and nobody being somebody.
Nah, Pa, don't be playing with us tonight. We ain't got time for that. That's not gonna work tonight. That's not gonna work. Everybody should know who you is if they don't know. You know what I'm saying? You feel me?
Yeah.
Okay, see, I don't dodge no smoke. You came in the audience, you know what I'm saying, and TurtleGang has pulled up on us tonight for this conversation. You know what I mean? Peace to you. Can you hear us?
Peace to everyone. Peace. You can hear me?
Peace and blessings. Yes, sir.
Peace.
Peace was happening, cuz I see you, baby.
And as I said before, we might disagree on this and things, you know what I mean? But this whole conversation is not about intentions towards nobody that's on the panel. We're just having a conversation. So, you know what I mean? And how this discussion comes about is because we're hearing certain things out there in the platforms today. And I think a lot of you have been around for a minute, you know what I'm saying? And there are different perspectives, you know what I'm saying? So
shit, I was around this bitch for hours.
Lord, we got to keep this in perspective right now. Like the conscious community is saying some new groups. I don't know if it's I don't remember this being done before. You know what I mean? We're hearing this perspective of Jerusalem being in the Americas or Egypt being in the Americas or like that's something new. Like to us, I would think like hip hop changed. You know what I'm saying? This is some new shit. I'm just being real, like how hip hop changed. You know what I mean? And what we was being told then, now it's being flip flopped, like the opposite.
Well,
like it's a paradigm shift. I'm trying to understand what's really catching. I'm like I ain't that old. I'm just saying that fuck all this. I ain't that old. You feel me? So like
well, Ishmael in his 50s. I'm almost to my 50s. I'm 2 years old. You know what I'm saying?
Still looking 30. Okay, I'm with you.
You trying to play games?
But
man, don't hide your age.
Not only do I call Norris TurtleGang, but I also call him TurtleGang of hip hop because he's been around the legends dealing with the boom bap nation. So I mean, to listen to old school rap was like dealing with the upliftment of the people, but what it is today, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I mean, some people might not like what I said, but that's being detrimental to our people. It's detrimental to our people. You know what I'm saying? But hey, I yield the floor over.
Hold on real quick, Apostle. Noise, you just came on. You've been watching in the chat. You know what I mean? And me and you even have crossed paths on Facebook. You might not have never met me currently like how we're talking right now. And obviously I come in peace as we talk. We can disagree to agree on certain things. Sometimes we taken out of context and text messages and stuff. I mean, Ishmael had the same situation back in the day. You know what I mean? Yeah. But when we talk to each other real time, I think we'd be on the same page about a lot of things. So we're going to have this conversation tonight, though. I heard you talking to him on Facebook earlier about one of the topics that we're talking about right now. And what's your thoughts on being that you have the Lenape lineage and you've been doing this for a long time, this Jerusalem Egyptian thing? Because, what's your thoughts on that?
All right. So I'm going to say a few things. I'm trying to get it real quick. So it's a concept of rubber plants in a real forest, right? You can go buy a plastic plant. Go put it in the forest. It's going to look like all the rest of the trees, right? Come back in a year's time. The rest of the trees have grown and they bear fruit. That rubber plant ain't bear no fruit. So I say Jerusalem in America, all this conversation, what fruit has it ever bear? You know what I'm saying? And what fruit could it possibly bear? Right? So now in terms of this whole idea of Jerusalem being the Americas, the Hebrews being from the Americas, this is in no way to disparage anybody who's of any Hebrew faith. If that's your lineage, this is not about that. Right? So in the early 1600s, when these settlers were landing in certain territories, they started to encounter people and they observed their customs of living and things of this nature. And they wrote in their own books. It's in a book called Ye O Monmouth. It came out in 1619. It's the recordings of the settlers of what we would call Monmouth County, New Jersey, which is where my family is from. Right? In their recordings, they said, these surely must be the lost tribes of Israel. So that first concept of anything over here having to do with the history from over there, the ground was laid in 1619. But that was because these Europeans were coming over here and speculating on what they were seeing. From that, they called us everything from Moors to Ethiopians. They also called the same people when they encountered them in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, which is where the Verrazano Bridge is, which is where I currently live. That's where Verrazano encountered the Lenape people. In his recordings, he also described them as Ethiopians. See what I'm saying? Why? Because these are terms that they're familiar with. So until you learn a people and know how a people identify themselves, you're going to associate titles that you're familiar with. So when these Europeans came to these lands, in so many scenarios, they associated what they were encountering with mythology and legends from their past. So when they saw the Lenape, they said, these surely must be the lost tribes of Israel. When they saw pyramids, they said, this has got to be Egypt of the West. That's the term they use, and that's the Masonic term, Egypt of the West. Doesn't mean this is Egypt. It means it's a reference point, something they can relate to. Okay. You also have a situation in when the Spaniards entered into California and they encountered large tribes. To answer the question of a brother, do I believe Negroes in America? Like, Negro is a title. I believe it was nations of people that you would describe as Negro that populated the whole earth, let alone just America. You know what I'm saying? But when these Spaniards encountered these tribes in California, many of the soldiers as children had read certain books, right? One of the books was a book that spoke about a mythological Queen Khalifa on a magical island named California. So when they encountered these tribes in California, they said, these surely must be the ones we read about in these books. So they started associating everything they encountered with what they knew about, which is what anybody does. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of what we're getting caught up in is these people's early accounts of what they were observing and them comparing it to what they already knew. And we're sitting here arguing over it because some European recorded something in his journal. But I would say, if we're going to say Egypt is in America, I would say go sit down with those people who are descendants of those tribes who occupied that land and have that conversation with them. And if they co-sign that shit, I co-sign it. But until the qualified people are having these conversations, these just rubber plants in a real forest.
I appreciate your thoughts on that, Eric. I mean, hey, everybody got their thoughts. Your tradition is showing certain things. Actually, you said 1619 a minute ago, and I actually have found something saying like 1576 when it started coming in with certain people who started saying the same thing you just said. So the trail is there.
So earlier than that,
the trail is there. You know what I mean? Like
the point
I
is,
see where you're going though. Like the point is, the narrative was pushed on the people.
Yeah, the narrative was being put on us long before we even had knowledge of these things. You know what I'm saying? So this is like I said, this is a conversation we having because there's so many layers that we gotta unravel to get to our truth, and we doing it via other cultures. We working our way back home via other cultures. And hopefully people will start seeing the similarities and stop wanting to understand who got it from who and who created what first. Because when you talk about culture, culture don't belong to man. Just like the land don't belong to us. We belong to the land. We belong to the culture. When you move, you take aspects of your culture that are pertinent to your existence, and that would be your personal, right? But when you go to another environment, you have to adapt to the culture of that environment. That culture don't belong to you. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
So when you see people doing certain things all over the planet, it ain't because they copied off somebody, it's because they all observe the same things. A tribe in the Americas don't need a tribe in Africa to show them the stars. They can look right up and see it themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like, you take two farmers from two different lands and put them together. They don't speak the same language, but they speak the same language. And they're going to find a commonality because they speak the language of farming. Right? So when you got different groups coming together, they're going to find out that they speak similar languages, but it's not the spoken language. It's the agricultural language. You know what I mean? It's the traditional language. And this is where these groups come together and make bonds. You know what I mean? We was doing trade in the Americas with groups from all over the world going back over 100,000 years. That's what they've been hiding from people. They've been hiding that modern man is much older than what they tell us. So, of course, there's been mummies in Africa with cocaine from here because it's been heavy trade going on long before the Europeans came in and turned and twisted everything up. You know what I mean? It's only being revealed to those of us now who are coming from under that spell. But there are nations that have their records. They just been suppressed.
I got you on that.
So
I appreciate you for joining us, man.
So rather than read these European books, we should talk to these nations.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Issa, you've been quiet. I want you to get your thoughts in on this part of what you just heard in the conversation. Can you hear me, Issa?
Yeah,
Professor.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Something you want to say about what you just heard?
Yeah, I just got a question for TurtleGang.
Okay.
I don't subscribe to the Egypt or the Jerusalem thing over here either. But the question would be the various books, articles, Smithsonian, they say they found Egyptian artifacts in the Grand Canyon. They also reports of finding Hebrew tablets amongst the Cherokee nations. You're probably familiar with it. Do you say that those people came over here at some point in time before Columbus? That's my question.
You're muted. If you hear us, you're muted. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, so the second part of the question, the reason you're going to see similarities between Hebrews and Cherokees because they come from the same root people, right? And you have different groups of people coming over here or the same people that just came at different times. When I say different times, I'm saying different spans of hundreds or maybe thousands of years. So over that period of time, their culture and their tradition and their language changed. So you had cousins linking back up with cousins who had been separated for thousands of years. You know what I'm saying? The Cherokee is one of those groups. You know what I mean? As is all the other different groups. Everybody related, they just either developed in a distinct part at a different time, you know what I'm saying? Or they migrated at a different time, but they all got similar roots. So you're going to see similar things. Now, the first question in terms of them finding Egyptian artifacts. So check this out. Kemet is a library, right? It's a library. If there is, if the ruler of Kemet, right, at any time did anything, they recorded it. So yes, there might be what they call Egyptian artifacts in the Grand Canyon, but let's match that up with the records found in Kemet of the Pharaoh, you know what I mean, who sent that off, because he gonna want that documented in his name, because that's what they did over there. They ain't do nothing without documenting it and making a big thing out of it. You know what I'm saying? Now, also, what you have to understand too is that hieroglyphics, many people had hieroglyphics. A bunch of different people had hieroglyphics. So they're finding things and they're associating it all with Egypt because that was where they got the bulk of their understanding from, through Greece and through Egypt. So that's where they get their civilization from. So that's what they measure everything against. That's their parents. So anything you encounter, you're going to reference what your parents taught you. That's your base, right? So their base is biblical history. And you know that the foundation of biblical history is what was going on in what we call Northeast Africa, you know what I mean, into the Middle East, right? So that's the basis of their understanding of all things. So anything they see, they're going to measure against that. So, like, and on top of that, as I stated before, like, it's been people traveling back and forth for hundreds of thousands of years. It was interrupted for a short period of time because of the Ice Age. You know what I mean? But before that, it was animals going back and forth. That's why you have the llama coming from South America and then developing into the camel in Asia through its migration. You know what I'm saying? And many other animals. So this is what we have to really take into consideration, that modern man been here way longer than they keep telling us.
I agree with you on that. So real quick, Rob and Ish, which one of you want to go first? What's your thoughts on this conversation that we're having right now before we go to the next topic? And again, thank you, TurtleGang, for joining us tonight on these topics.
Thank you, brother.
We want no echo chamber. We want the truth from your opinion of research, each of you. So,
as Brother TurtleGang was speaking, he used the term, which is what anybody does in the comparison side of things. I'm in agreement with that because we'll just say, for example, say this was a flying saucer that landed in the middle of a stadium. Well, we be calling them the great things that walked off of that. We would be calling them aliens because that's what we would compare them to, right? We would say a flying saucer landed in the stadium and some aliens walked out. Now, if you ask those people, they may be speaking something and not even understand what you're saying. They certainly wouldn't call themselves aliens, right? But you're comparing it to something that you know. So when you go to these different areas, that's exactly what you would do. Again, as Brother accurately said, that's what anyone would do. So they're using their frame of reference and applying that frame of reference. That doesn't mean historically that it's the same exact thing, but that's all that they can compare it to. So I'm gonna
I agree with that. I agree with that too. I think that's the similarity part. Matter of fact, a lot of resources I read is saying that that's the fact that these people had oral history, you know what I mean, of how they gave out their information to their tribal people, you know what I mean? It wasn't written down. Okay, that's a similarity to these group of people who are dark skinned too. Okay, they do these things around the solstice and the equinoxes, dealing with their, like how you said, planting things and knowing when not to plant things. That's also something. Okay, like you said, that's something. TurtleGang said it. Stars. You know what I mean? Based off of your seasons, winter, fall, spring, and summer. No matter where you at, if you're indigenous people, aboriginal people to the land, at a certain point, you learn how to grow off the land. So you don't know, no matter where you at, what seasons to celebrate and whatever cultures you do to do that, wherever you're coordinated to on the earth. You know what I'm saying? I would think that's common sense. But at the same time, because of the cultural similarities, then we can confuse how a religious narrative will fit all cultures. That really, as he stated, I ain't seeing being really similarity saying factually that these people are the same people until the 15th century. But for that time frame, every culture had an origin story. Asiatics, Africa, Europeans, and Americans. They all had their own origin. Even though in the Americas, the different tribes have different origin stories amongst themselves.
Correct. You know and it really comes down to having, the best PR. When you got the hot PR, how the wax song gets played on the radio every day and it becomes hot. You started off hating it and it became like, okay, it's pretty catchy. Repetition. So that's really what the Bible was, being mass produced. You started seeing this type of mentality kind of overriding or, kind of being labeled, something else. Yeah.
So, all right. So now I got everybody back. So you can just flash back up here. I want to go to the next one. You know what I mean? We got until 11 o'clock, maybe a little bit after. They might let me hang a little after, but this
I missed a little part of the segment because I'm at work. I'm doing security.
I know you're at work. I appreciate you.
I just got back
either
on.
Way. Ain't no pressure.
Yeah.
Okay, so where I'm going with this, because we did the ancient old world part just now. My next segment is now the Hebrew and the Moorish part, dealing with this Aboriginal culture of Americas and trying to always put the narrative of everybody in the Americas being either the Hebrew or the Moor. You know what I'm saying? Dealing with the people of their Aboriginal origin stories of the Americas prior to the 15th century, when people we know of the origin of Moors or called Hebrews came to the Americas with their situations they came over here with. How do you guys feel about that? Paul, you just came back in. I'm gonna let you slide because you got to go. What you got to think about that real quick?
No, I'm good. I'm good. I just had to make sure I had to do my rounds. But so you want me to go ahead on and chime on that? What you just
Oh
spoke
no,
about the Hebrews?
yes sir. Yeah, that part. That's the topic we
Okay.
on now. I'm gonna go back around. Yes sir.
All right. Well, from me knowing what I know, right? Um, Dealing with the Babylonian captivity, when you had some Hebrews in them that actually fled before the captivity of Babylon, you actually have some that came to the Americas. You know what I'm saying? You know, and that was dealing with the Babylonian captivity that was like in 500 BCE. You know, so yeah.
Okay. Rob, I'm gonna go with Rob. Then it's then TurtleGang, then back to Ish. So Rob, what you think?
Oh man, you talk about as far as the Hebrews and the Moor situation.
Yes sir.
Back to what Turtle Gang was saying, like as far as people and the culture as being similar globally, I think that's right. You know what I mean? Like the people that came here may have saw a similar culture and say, "Yo, those got to be Hebrews." You know, were they calling themselves Hebrews? Probably not. You know, and see, this is what like me. I'm not into religion, so when people start doing biblical references, I'm looking for like the artifacts. I'm looking for the documentation that tells people this is what y'all were doing, but I'm not going on people's belief systems. You know what I mean? Because people have had so many different beliefs over the years, and that'll hang you up. You know what I mean? I'm not really into that. I like to cut down to the point. So with the Moor thing, I mean, Moors, and me and you have actually done a podcast about Moors before, and you broke down a whole lot about Moors and all the different ways the Moors applied. I still, in my heart of hearts, still feel like Moors were specific groups of people from a specific period of time in a specific place. Now,
Hmm.
if you came here and you saw somebody that was doing something similar, you may call them Moorish, and we've seen that in documentation. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? But would they call themselves Moors? I don't think they would. You know what I mean? Just like the Indians probably wouldn't call themselves Hebrews or
Right.
Indians, for that matter. You
Right.
know what I mean? So all I'm saying is like we had global we had global cultural similarities. I feel like and you could really still kind of see the remnants of it now. But to say that they were these people or that people, I can't. I wouldn't bet money on it. I would just say that the similarities are there. You know, the cultural similarities are there. Maybe some of the daily practices. All of that. It's possible they're the same type of people. The names, I don't condone the names just because we got so many different names. You know what I mean? It's like, hey man, I can't say they were Moors. I could say maybe they were similar to the Moors. You know, so I don't know, bro. That's all I got for that one right there.
Ain't no pressure. Hey, it's a question going around the table. We sitting at the dinner table like Malcolm said. We made our own table to talk about this at. So we doing it our way. So Issa, what you think about this?
All right.
Yeah, well, it depends what time period you're talking about. Um, I have more research when Columbus came over that could be verified than pre-Columbus when it comes to the Moors. So I have read different articles and there's evidences of Moors coming over here before Columbus, but I have more research that you could actually find documentation that they came with Columbus, or that whole Spanish conquest over here. They came with them. So, as most people know, in 1492 it was the end of the Moorish Empire in Iberia. The Catholics won. Queen Isabel and King Ferdinand. With the fall of Granada, they had a treaty, and the Moors were supposed to be allowed to stay, but the Moors and the Hebrews were later expelled from Spain. Within, I think, 5 to 10 years, there was a mass expulsion. At the same time, the Portuguese were really the ones who was riding the west coast of Africa, and they were kidnapping people and enslaving them. So when you have that dynamic going on, and that was under Prince Henry the Navigator, when you have that dynamic going on, you see that Islamic Moorish reign was coming into an end in Europe. A lot of them went back to North Africa, but you know about what they call the Moriscos or the Moranos. Moriscos were the Muslims who were undercover practicing Catholicism outwardly, but they still retain their Islamic faith. And what they call the Moranos were the Hebrews who did the same thing. A lot of these people came to the Americas. It's documented. So when we talk about the Moors coming here, I tend to go more with that documentation because there's piles of it than pre-Columbus. Even though I do believe there was maybe colonies or presence here, but I'd rather stick to what could be documented. And when we talk about that, Florida is probably going to be the place. Florida, Cuba, and those islands around Florida.
Hispaniola, Bahamas.
Yeah, Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, Bermuda, where you're going to have the biggest presence of those type of Moors in the Americas initially when Columbus, Spaniards came over here. And even in Brazil, because there's even in Brazil, I think it was in Bahia, Brazil, that there was some down there as well. So when it comes to the Moors being in the Americas, I'd rather stick to the documentation that there's a pile of it that we could show as evidence of that when they came with the conquistadors, and particularly in Florida, there was, I think, I want to say 1, 2, 3. There's 3 different episodes in Florida where Ponce de Leon came over and he got ransacked by the Calusa. And after Ponce de Leon, you had Aviles. I think his name was Aviles. And you also had there's one more. I want to say Menendez. I can look it up. But within their missions or expeditions in Florida, when you look up documentation, it says that they were in English, in the Florida history in English, they're going to say Negroes. That's the term they use.
Right.
But those people who came with the Spaniards were not called Negroes. They were Moors, right?
Right.
And those 3, I believe like 3 different battles or expeditions, those people actually they flipped sides and joined the natives that was in Florida at that time. They weren't called the Seminoles at the time. There was like 14 or 15 different tribes.
Yeah, Seminoles ain't around at that time.
Them. So
don't forget the Soto
incursion with the Moors in Florida and indigenous people that could be documented.
I want to say something to you before I go ask TurtleGang's position. Hold on now, Pop. I will come back around. Trust me, this is a good topic right here. I want to get to this part. So some clarity from everybody's perspectives here, right? When they research and obviously your cultural, whatever your genealogy you have it, even in your bloodline, right? Now, when you just said 1492, right? When you said 1492, there's some things that I've found, like you said, documented stuff that we could go through and see there are particular things, a group of people that are being subscribed in 1492. Now, the term Moor is the popular term. I know it is because, it's been around for a minute. We got the Moor, you know what I mean? But you said Morano because, I had Lee Cummins and Cootie Mayo on a podcast together dealing with this term Morano. You know what I mean? Because they've done their extension of research, you know what I'm saying? So I was trying to keep to the sources, right? So when you said Morano, I'm in agreement with you. That's a factual situation in 1492. Who got expelled? But in the Alhambra, that's it, right? The Alhambra decree, right, in 1492. It particularly says Jews, though. It don't say Moors. It don't say Muslims. It says Jews, right? Now, in 1609, I'm gonna give credit that they show that the king at that time frame that was dealing with those Moriscos kicked them out too. You know what I'm saying? But in 1492, the popular year that everybody want to go to, the actual decree is very specific to a Jew. You know what I'm saying? Now, in that situation, I'm gonna tell you something that no one at least likes to even bring up. It seems 1492. You know what else happened in around that same time frame outside the European situation? The Muslim Askia Muhammad. You know what I'm saying? He's the general of the Songhai Empire. He converts to become a Muslim. All right, this is 1492. He takes the power from Sunni Baro, who was the son of Sunni Ali. And Sunni Ali is the king of the Songhai Empire from 1464 to 1492. This is the area they're calling Negro land. This is the land they're saying the land of Judah. This is the Songhai Empire. The Songhai Empire goes back to 300 AD. These are people we would call Yahudi running a whole empire in what we would call today Mali, Senegal, Nigeria, Ghana, the whole coast that we call the Ivory Coast, that we would call Jews, technically in historical reference, from my understanding of these groups of people and what their faith was at the time frame. So it's funny how this empire just sends the Muslims come in on the empire, and the people in 1492 who are getting kicked out of those regions are also being labeled as Jews, dealing with that particular decree. They're also being labeled Moors, meaning dark-skinned Moranos, as I've always pointed out. They're the ones being expelled and coming to the Americas. We have the proof of them mixing in with the Mayans. And down there in Brazil, this is who's coming in from my own research. So I just wanted to point out that I see what you're going with, but I want to make sure that was clear from my part of what I saw. You know what I mean? And what I'm seeing in genealogy too. The cryptoness happening with this Catholic situation under the Roman Catholic situation at that time. But Turtle, what's your thoughts on it? I want to get everybody's thoughts. Let's tap in.
Okay, so everybody is reflective of the truth, because there's many different reasons why. It's multiple reasons. Well, I'm gonna go back to a speech that was given by the principal chief of the Anyawiya Nation, or the Dabo Nation, also known as Cherokee. Right, so this is the principal chief. You can find his paintings in museums. He's a chief in Virginia. He also traveled to Europe and went before the Queen of England. His name is Chief Atta Kula Kula. All right, so it says the original Dabo. Let me start up here a little earlier. The Dabo are well known for their beauty, as they have their own distinctive look from other indigenous people. European colonists and today's scientists claim the Dabo look more East Indian or Middle Eastern than looking like other indigenous groups on Turtle Island. The original Dabo skin complexion ranged from brown, tan, and olive, according to Chief Atta Kula Kula. According to a ceremonial speech in 1750, we traveled here from the rising sun before the time of the Stone Age man. Legend claims the Dabo came here from what is now known as India or Sri Lanka many years ago. This is talking about they migrated here in the Stone Age. So those migrations would predate any modern name. So to try to link any of these people with any modern nations that exist is false. So the principal chief in 1750 of the Anyawiya, the Cherokee Nation, states in a speech to the entire nation, as well as the United States government, that their people come from a territory or area that we now call Sri Lanka, right? So then it goes to describe their attire. All right, it says, European historian John Haywood, one of the first who studied the Dabu origin and concluded he was one of the first to study their origin. This is the Cherokee, the Anyawea. He concluded they came from South Asia linked to the Hindu culture. They wore lots of jewelry, including silver, copper, gold, turquoise, crystals, and shells for fashionable and healing purposes. The men wore traditional head turbans similar to the people in East India and Middle East. Now, if you look at traditional Cherokee, you will find that the men wear turbans. That is something that is a little different than a lot of the other tribes. So now I can start to formulate how I feel about it, because I've accessed an indigenous nation, what they say, and then the scientists now who study what they say have verified it based on their findings. So I'm satisfied with this. So why do we find similarities between Moors and certain natives? Primarily, that would be the Cherokee, for these very reasons.
Okay, I'm glad you pointed that out. Then I don't think I've heard that before. Be honest with you, real quick. That's a drop. You heard me? For you to say it like that live tonight. You know what I mean?
Chief Atakula Kula.
Put it in perspective.
Look them
up. You know what I
up.
mean? That's real talk. I appreciate that. We will. I want everybody to look that up. Don't believe nothing you heard on this conversation tonight. But we don't want you to. You're just having a conversation. We want people to go ahead and look these things up.
Yeah, you can definitely look it up.
This conversation. Yeah.
Chief Atakula Kula.
Real quick. Go ahead. Issa, you had something to say before we go to Ish?
Yeah, I got a question for TurtleGang. Are you saying, is that the only, or that's one aspect of it?
I'm saying that's an ancient aspect. I'm saying what the brother before me said is a more modern aspect, and so on and so forth. I'm saying all of these things played a part in it. The events that took place in 1492, events that took place long before that, doing trade, all of this is a part of why we see these things. It's called cross-cultural diffusion. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, ethnogenesis. Ish, what you thought about that? Go ahead, bro.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean the Moorish element, dealing with that Moorish part of the topic. You have Moors that as brother Professor Esau accurately said, that came over with the Menendez and the De Soto, but when they came over, the tribes weren't saying that you're me or you're us, welcome home. They differentiated, understanding that they came over with the Spaniards, and them coming over in that capacity. Again, as was accurately said, there were some of them that either were left behind because they were either injured or escaped, that went out and went and lived amongst the populations. And those are the tribes that I do derive from. I do derive from that Muskogee bloodline and from those Dakusa and the Kushata tribes. And it is a part of the writings, and they were used as translators in the later years. As far as for the Seminoles, they were used as translators. Moors were used. If Brother God can post up the link that we have in the back, we have a depiction of the Columbus Indians. The Columbus Indians from the museum that's in Amsterdam. And as you can see from the depictions, the link is also on there that takes you directly to the link. We see what the Indians are depicted as that greeted Columbus. So yeah, you can look at those depictions of these populations that greeted Columbus, and yes, somebody can say, okay, yeah, they look like Moors, but in that, the cultures, are you looking at them? Are you describing them in a descriptive form? Or are you trying to say that these are Moorish people? They're not Moorish people because they're not coming from that same direct line of lineage. These are the ancient people. So again, as Brother TurtleGang actually said also, we're talking about an earlier population of people. And in these earlier migrations of people, or these indigenous populations of people, they're not the same people that came over in that later time. So I just think that those terms are being used in a broad sense of saying this was all Morocco. Historically, that's not accurate. Even if you deal with the northeastern tribes, the northeastern tribes had what you would call a Moorish, interactions, but they didn't call themselves Moors in that sense. They were still identified as American Indian tribes with their own distinct bloodline, heritage, and lineage. So to call them Moors on the broad sense is not accurate. So I just think that the proper context of how you apply those terms are most important.
I agree with that, actually. Matter of fact, Ish, Do you need this up still? That was a good presentation of that, though. I appreciate that link for tonight. For anybody that got to see it, they can go see the museum and everything. You just showed and everything. Amsterdam, right? I said Amsterdam, the Dutch. There's links in the chat for anybody that wants to go look at that. So because we don't got all night. Like we don't do this like YouTube joint. This is a mixed show. We live. Shout out to Museum of the Lounge in our local area, obviously, and people are listening in different channels, Mixcloud, YouTube, and people listen after the fact too. So as we move through the conversation, I agree that there's mixtures, right? But there's not in the variation to take over our population of the Aboriginal people, Indigenous people, or the American Indian that is on the land here in their different situations prior to these people mixing in. You know what I mean? Now, did they come anciently before 1500s? As I heard Turtle say, I agree. You know what I'm saying? There's different examples of people trading that's been kind of whitewashed out the situation because of a narrative that's being spent. You know what I mean? So we ain't gonna try to like discriminate against our own people that look like us that's been navigating the seas before 1492. But we just not some savages that they trying to say, oh, all of a sudden some white people brought some people on the ships and black people don't know how to get on the ocean. That's crazy. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, like we got to be real about this. So in a manner of cultural exchange and all the different mixtures that take place in the Americas for all the different genealogies that people are finding, we're not saying that nobody was not mixing before them time frames. I'm just saying that Jerusalem, Egypt, Bethlehem, you know what I'm saying? Mount Nebo, you know what I'm saying? I can give you all the different situations, and it's influenced because of a cultural situation, by the way, from my opinion. If it wasn't for an infusion of the cultures, you wouldn't have these narratives over here. You know what I mean? That's the proof of that narrative. But it doesn't mean that that's what it is. You know what I mean? So we can't get that caught up in it. You know what I mean? That's just how cultural exchange works, in my opinion, when we look at how we do today. You know what I mean? So with that moving on, Ish, prior time. Paul, you want to say something before I go to Ish?
Yeah, I wanted to say something.
I want to go ahead. Go ahead. Before I say something to Ish, it's you next.
All right, here you go. Right. The thing about King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, them motherfuckers was Moorish too. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Let me put that out there. They was Moorish too. Because in order to be royalty or a monarch, you had to have Moorish blood. Okay. In 2012, I'm about to post and pat myself on the back. When we did the Blog Talk Radio show, you remember that, right?
Yeah, I
was the first one that actually said that Christopher Columbus was a Sephardic Moorish Jew. That was in 2012. And then guess what? The BBC came out. The BBC came out in 2016 and said that Christopher Columbus was a Negro.
Yeah,
and I was like, damn. But the thing is this, right? It's just like when I told the Moors and them, I say, wait, hold on. A Morisco had already been a Morisco. That's not one that converted to Christianity because they was the ones that created the shit.
Come on.
Because I actually did a post on Facebook talking about the Moorish popes of Europe. And one of the Moorish pope was the one that made Emperor Constantine a Christian. And that was in 310 AD. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, oh shit. And another reason why I found out, if you remember, when they talk about the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, you know, when I was working at the international airport, I actually got to meet a diplomat from the Dominican Republic. She worked for the government. And she said they only talk about 3, but he came with a fleet of ships. They only talk about the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. But see, but also what I told people was that Christopher Columbus was also a Poor Knights of Templar. That's what he was sailing under. But y'all don't want to hear that from me, though. Hey.
No. Go ahead, no, Paul. Hold on, Paul. Wait, no, hold on, Paul. Go ahead, now, Paul. I'm gonna fuck with you now. I heard you say it. And listen. From my understanding, Columbus was a Marrano. You know what I'm saying? With some Basque mixture in them too. You know what I'm saying? Because them Basque came over, it was influencing with the Iroquois and the Algonquins before 1492. You know what I'm saying? It was on that sea catching whales and shit. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And cod.
And you know what else? You know. And you know what else too? They also came and mixed in.
Then you breaking up. Is it me, y'all? Am I tripping? He breaking up? He froze.
Yeah, it's
breaking up.
I know he out there in the zoo right now.
Damn.
in
At the
Louisiana.
best part, that's like the best part of the movie. Just going a commercial. Like, come on now,
Like,
come
oh,
on now.
pause. Yeah, come back, commercial. This man paused in the middle of his shit, the middle of the zoo. Hey, at the same
Oh
time though,
man, I
hey,
want him to finish that. Hey, I'm
me
trying to
too,
hear. I'm
man.
trying to hear that.
Hey, Paul, if you hear anything, man, go out and come back in. That's all I can say. Like how Clubhouse ain't ish. Hey, go out and come back in. You can't. You in the
Exactly.
Matrix. You in the Matrix. No real shit. Now, shout out to everybody in the chat, tapping into this conversation. You know what I mean? Indigenous People Holiday. Tomorrow's the weekend. Some people get paid off. They ain't got to work. He gone. Yeah, he out of there. I know he's gonna come back. He's gonna come back in. So, Ish, man, I want to come back to you though. We're gonna get the current time before I go to the next part. You know what I mean? Because I'm trying to time this right. I want everybody else to tap in on what is going on currently, because I know more Clubhouse and I know what's going on in the American Indian community a certain way for the narrative of generosity. You know what I'm saying? Not for any particular tribe or so, but just on a general situation. You know what I mean? So can you give us an update on what you be dealing with politics wise? First Nation, you've been into some shit. I want you to give me to me first on our podcast, because you've been doing your thing. Can you give me your thought and let everybody weigh in on it from all the different perspectives? Go ahead.
Yeah, we do have a petition that we're circulating that's dealing with the misclassification. You know, with that misclassification of what takes place is an erasure of our history and our identity. And what we're asking for is for that, to be addressed properly. So what we're doing is starting off with the petition. We also have what's called a manifesto that's already developed and being added on to, that's being presented. So that's being worked on behind the scenes also. But in that, again, what we're dealing with is a misclassification of what took place systematically in this country. We just showed you what the depictions are of those people who greeted Columbus. What were they called? Well, they would call themselves, the Kalinago. They were also the people that Columbus met over in Europe before he ever even got here, 20 years before he even came over to the West. He met those people. He identified those people and wrote it in his journal of what they looked like. So those people that greeted Columbus are called a lot of various other names today. African American, colored, Moorish, a lot of different other names other than what they are. And there's a history that's tied to those people also. And many of us derive from those people as far as the different lineages of the Aboriginal populations. So this is what we're addressing in the petition. We'll make sure that we're able to supply the link for everyone to please be able to read it. If you have any questions, my phone number is on there, or just contact me on my website. I'll be there in order to answer any questions that you may have. But I think that these are very important things that need to be addressed. Nobody has ever gone to the courts and addressed the fact that the Indian Removal Act is fraudulent. If it's completely fraudulent, and if this person is proven to be, Andrew Jackson, proven to be that foreigner of a Spanish citizen, why hasn't any attorney ever taken up the case? Who's going to speak for those people in order to say this is a total fraudulent thing that took place as far as the Indian Removal Act? This man was a treasonous. And even if you're found guilty of treason, you're not even allowed to be the president of the United States or a general. It's written in there that if you're found guilty of treason, you're not allowed to hold high office. That's by the law. So there's an entire fraud that took place in order to steal our land, our identity, and our heritage that's going to be addressed. So that's what the petition is going to be dealing with.
Okay, bet. So now you said that, I want to let everybody speak on it first, real quick, in your perspectives. If everybody understands what he just said, that's on the panel. Rob, what you thought about what he just said? We'll go to you first, and then TurtleGang, and then Chito. I think Issa gonna come back in. So Rob, what you think?
About what it said?
Yeah, what it just said, what they're doing the petition. Yeah.
I mean, just to be clear, we talking about the petition. Oh no, that's dope. I mean, yo, I'll sign up. You know what I mean? And as a matter of fact, look, I definitely would like to read more about it, but I know Ishmael is not playing. You know what I mean? As a matter of fact, I think I've seen that in your group. Ishmael, you put that up in your group maybe like a month or two ago, right?
Hey, Ish, who
yeah.
is the?
I think I actually shared that on my page.
Okay, who's the organization behind the petition? Who's the actual organizations? I don't want to be singular. So can you give us that real quick too, since he brought that up?
Yep, it's the Urban Indian Heritage Society. It's with my cousin Phoenix Moon. We have a lot of other various people that we're working in conjunction with as an actual coalition, you know. So by us confederating and just getting our groups together, we're trying to address this as an actual united body. So there's individuals that are in place as well as organizations, but that organization is the head organization, and we're there supporting under that umbrella.
Word. That's what's up. So now y'all doing your coalition move, politics as usual. TurtleGang, what you thought about that? I mean, what they're doing and your perspective on it.
I think it's commendable what he's doing. I think there's so many different layers to this fight, and when people can identify what role they can play and go with that, you know, full steam and make that they focus. You know what I mean? I think that's what we need. You know what I mean? So I commend the brother on what he's doing, man.
Okay, that's what's up.
Thank you for
what
that.
you thought? My bad.
Oh, all right. Here we go. Now, dealing with Andrew Jackson being under the Spanish jurisdiction, we have to go back and look at the melting pot that was done over here on this landmass. Now, with that being said, and with that being done, only thing that a president is, the president was, and I pointed this out in 2012 as well. A president was known as a royal president. If you don't know what a royal president is, I'll tell you what a royal president is. A royal president was nothing but a governor head that would actually report to the crown of England. Okay, that was the only thing that a royal president was, which became known as a president. And we all know that the United States is still a colony of the British Crown. So, with that being said, and by England, Spain, France, Portugal, Austria, Germany, all those are a part of the, listen what I'm about to say, of the Holy Morisco Holy Empire.
Yeah, Morisco.
So, yeah, that was the Morisco Holy Empire. That was the West Morisco Holy Empire. So with that being said, by him being of Spanish descent, which you had two brothers that was on the throne of Europe. One was the King of France and the other was the King of Spain. This is where you had the Spanish land grant come in at. That actually dealt with the Florides that went all the way to Louisiana. That's where Empress Verdiasi was talking about, when she actually had the Spanish land grant that came through her grandfather, who was Joseph de Maison Rouge, the Marquis, okay, who was a Frenchman. Okay, but what most people don't know is that if you ever saw the movie Caribbeans of the Pirates of the Caribbean's High Tide, when they showed you King George III, see, when he was talking to old boy who was a pirate, what's his name? Jack Sparrow. He said that you may not know who I am, but I'll tell you who I am. He said he is the Lord of Lords, Kings of Kings. He also the Holy Roman Empire treasurer. And he's also the King of England, the King of Ireland, but they left out the King of France because he was also the King of France. But see, they're not telling you that, but Hollywood just let it go so far, right? So with that being done, all of them is tied together. So for him to be a Spanish diplomat or citizen or subject, all that still falls under the Roman Catholic Church. And we all know how that's going to play out.
Ish, what you thought?
We all know how that's going to play out. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
I'm going to let you go next. Go ahead.
It's a good thing. And I'm with you with the fight because I'm ready to knock these motherfuckers out myself. So just know we in for a battle. It ain't gonna be no walk in the park. We got a battle upon us.
No, matter of fact, since you said that before, Ish and I'm like, that obviously you brought your petition to the table, this dinner table conversation we having tonight, and Issa, I want your thoughts on it too. But to reply to what he just said, I mean, of what the historical things you brought in to what you brought into the table, I want to let you respond. So in that manner, Ish, what you thought about that?
Yeah, respectfully, a person cannot be a United States citizen denounce his United States citizenship, take a sworn oath to Spain, sign the documents of being a sworn citizen of Spain, and then go on and become the president of the United States. You can't do it. That's called treason. No different than what Benedict Arnold was guilty of. He went against his country, and nobody found his signed document of denouncing America until 1994. I repeat, 1994. It was in an obscure library over in Spain. So that makes it an illegal act, and that's what's going to be addressed.
Gotcha. Okay. I see where you're coming from. I want everybody to hear the narrative. Really, I know you on this shit. So if you get behind some shit, I know you got something up your sleeve ish. See, I know you be having something up your sleeve. You happen to have a political understanding of where you're coming from. I know you ain't just know. You've been around too long. You know what I'm saying? Like, out of all the people I know that's involved, I know you. You know what I'm saying? I just keep it real. Anybody out there that I keep it real. Like, even if I disagree with certain things, because I like, you know how he said, like, this system, it's a fight. But I'm not hating on what the move is, to be understood that we've been misclassified and how we need to be getting back to our human rights and all that good stuff that need to be acknowledged. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like, you know, the maneuvers and the details of it, because we can't read through the whole thing tonight. So everybody can just go ahead and read it. I just want you to go ahead and get your, you know what I mean? Slide it in there.
Yeah,
Slide
but
it in there
also
real quick. Let people think about it and know what's going on.
Yeah, even though Andrew Jackson did that, you still have to ask the question, what made him go to the Spanish side? Because everybody know that the Spaniards was the big dog of the Holy Roman Empire. They was the big dog. They was the big dog. And they still is the big dog as quiet as kept. They still the big dog. Because in 2017, the Spanish monarch came over here to Louisiana. You know what I'm saying? Dealing with the 300 tricentennial. You know what I'm saying?
Are you asking me why he did it?
You have to understand. You have to understand the house that they're coming from, bruh. The house that they're coming from is dealing with the House of Orleans and the House of Bourbon. That ain't no bitch ass house, bruh. It's not.
Well, go ahead. It's a good one.
Are you asking me the motive of why he did it, or have you studied it, sir?
Yeah, what's the reason why he did it? Why did he go and sign the Spain?
I'm asking you, have you studied it at all? Did you know that he was a Spanish citizen, sir?
Yes, I did know.
Okay,
yes,
do you know why he was?
The reason why that he went was actually a political move. A political move, like I said, once again, the United States is under the British Crown. It's still a colony. It's still a colony. So when you still have the Spanish in them that still have mostly all the power and everything, because the Spanish in them still run through the British House, dealing with the House of Orleans and the House of Bourbon.
Okay.
And you don't have to take my word for it.
Right. What I would do is just request for you to simply just go to my website. It gives you the motives of why he did it, along with his signature and the documentations and the whole background of it. Now, the reason why he did it was because he wanted to get access to the waterways that were taking place in Mississippi. So he did it because of greed. And it's all laid out on the actual website of why he did it. And again, these aren't my words. These are the documentations of the professors who brought it to the light. And respectfully, you wasn't dealing with this before me, bro.
I'll tell you this. Do you know about the Treaty of Paris?
In what aspect of it? I've heard it. Yes, I've studied it.
Okay. Do you know what they call the Mississippi River in New Orleans and Louisiana at that time in that Treaty of Paris?
Well, they were fighting for the access to the Natchez because it was really under the Spanish. The Spanish and the Spanish and the French were fighting for that particular region, which is why he took the oath to Spain. That's exactly the reason why.
Just like I said before, the Spanish and the French in them is running through the same blood, dealing with the families, the two brothers that were sitting on the throne. That's why I was saying earlier. Now, if you didn't know, in that Treaty of Paris, Louisiana or New Orleans was called the New El Madrid. Okay, it was called the New Madrid. We have the documents in the Empress book. This is why I said what I said. That's the reason why he actually went to go sign, because he knew that Spain, like I said before, is the fucking original power dog of the Holy Roman Empire. That's why he did it also, because remember, the Spaniards and them was over here before the French. There was two brothers on the bloodline that ran the House of Bourbon and the House of Orleans, like I said before.
Right, but the Empress didn't know about that, brother. I was with the Empress in 91. She didn't know that.
Guess what? In her book, The Return of the Ancient Ones, she have it in her book, dealing with the Treaty of Paris, and also dealing with the Marquis de Maison Rouge, and dealing with the de Bastra.
She knew nothing about Andrew Jackson being a sworn citizen of Spain. I was with her in 91.
I didn't. No, I'm not talking about her knowing about Andrew Jackson. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the Treaty of Paris and dealing with the Spanish land grants.
Okay,
and that's the reason why the Spanish land grant still exists today. And that's why it was never sold to the United States, because it was known as no man's land. That's why I say the British monarchy them came here in 2017 because they still got locked down on this motherfucker. That's what I'm trying to tell you, brother Ishmael. I'm not gonna tell you something I don't know, bruh.
Okay, well, it's the conversation. That's the whole point of it. I want to come from all perspectives. And real quick, you've been quiet, man. I don't want to leave nobody out. What's your thoughts on this? What the petition is? Oh, he went out, man. Look at that. Yeah, typical. Okay. All right. So Ish, then you can respond until Issa comes back, so he can put his thoughts in on your petition and everything that's going on. What's your if you want to respond to this part of this conversation?
Who's it to me?
Yeah. If you want to respond to what he was saying, Issa went out.
Oh, no. We good. We good. No, we got to understand it. We understood. We're good.
Okay. So when it comes to the petition, though, overall, Pa, how do you feel about the petition, though? I get what you're saying about the technical difficulty of the Spanish
it's a
part
good
and
idea.
the crown and all that.
It's a good idea to get in the fight. It's a good idea to get in the fight. It's a very good idea to get in the fight. You know what I'm saying? And also dealing with the Indian Removal Act, right? And I said this before on one of my lives. How out of all the regions and area that Andrew Jackson wanted to move the Muskogee people out to Oklahoma, how did he know to move them to Oklahoma? Out of all the other places, why he chose Oklahoma?
Anybody want to answer? Anybody on the panel can answer.
Yeah, that came from Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson put that in motion. Thomas Jefferson let it be known that he wanted to move the indigenous populations west of the Mississippi. He put that in motion.
And why is that? Why out of every other place of North America, why he wanted to move them west of the Mississippi?
Well, he needed to make some room for some white folk.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, those are the people who
y'all ready for that?
Into the homes. Yeah.
Y'all ready? Y'all ready for the answer? Y'all ready for the answer?
Go ahead, Paul. What's your thoughts on it? We having a conversation.
The reason why he moved the Muskogee to Oklahoma, because that's where the west of the Mississippi, because that's where the Muskogee came from, west of the Mississippi. He only brought them back to where they came from, and that was west of the Mississippi. And you can check that out on my Facebook page. You can go to Chito. You heard me? I got it on the Facebook page. So go ahead.
Yeah.
Right, what you got to think? Go ahead.
I was going to ask you what kind of documentation. I was just going to ask Paul, like, what kind of documentation are you getting that information from? Because I'm interested. I like to read it.
Yeah,
that documentation. That documentation is actually on my Facebook. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, bro. I hear you.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I hear you. Yes, sir.
But do we have a source outside of the Facebook page? Things can go differently. Like people want to see sources from like a
You can go.
I want to be real about this conversation tonight. Now, you know what I mean?
Here it is.
You cover a lot of historical things. You represent the nation of people. Here it is. So I know talking about certain things, but we can't
dealing with my family, the Yati Yamasi. We actually have that when the Muskogee and them came across the Mississippi to come to the east, and they fought against us.
So the Muskogee coming from over there into that area.
They came
fight
from the
against
west, and they came
Yamasi.
into the east, and they fought against us.
Okay. The Muskogee.
The Muskogee. Yes.
Who became the Carter Creek?
Later down the line.
Right. I'm making sure we're online. Everybody can understand what we're talking about right now, what you saying. Make sure we all clear about what you're saying right now. So,
because I had to tell one dude, I said, bruh, I said they had to come, because just like what most people don't know, that Muskogee actually mean the people of the swamps. So Oklahoma have swamps. And I had one dude trying to say, oh, Oklahoma don't have no swamps. I said, yes, the fuck it does. It have more than 7 major swamps. You know what I'm saying? And it's actually in history that spoke about them coming west from the west of the Mississippi and coming to fight those that was on the southeastern side of the Mississippi River.
You know what's
so only thing they did.
That.
So the only thing they did was send them back from where the fuck they came.
I was saying
from the west of the Mississippi.
Interesting you said that, because you know the word Muskogee is a Ladino word, right? It's not the pure Hittichi Yamasi language. It's
bingo.
So
bingo.
The Muskogee is saying that there are mixed people, Muskie and G, which is the mixed people. G is from the actual original people from that area, and the word Muskie is dealing with the word mix, Muskegee. You know what I'm saying? Muskogee. That's a Ladino word, which is dealing with some of them Sephardic Jews, by the way, too, and mixed in with some indigenous people that were.
And also you can find it in the book called "The Creation of the Creek Nation." You know, you can find it in that book. And then that's another book. Man, just miss my head, but it actually speak about it, and I actually have the stuff that's on my page where you actually can go and see the reference of many other books that it spoke about the Muskogee coming from the west of the Mississippi, coming into the east. Yeah,
but interesting. This is all good. So either way, though, back to the petition. You know what I'm saying? People can go research everything you just heard tonight in the conversation. That's how you got to do it. That's how it got to work. But this is a good conversation for the panel discussion real quick. But it's you back in here. Did you hear the petition part? Did you miss anything? You had technical difficulties?
I missed about 10 minutes of it, but I already signed the petition. I'm hip to it.
Okay, bet. So you down with the move, for the misclassification of the people who have indigenous roots that look like us, they call the Negro or African and colored people.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. The right to self-identify is a part of your indigenous rights and also as part of your human rights. And the books I put together, I addressed that in there for individuals who wanted to do it individually. But the strongest thing to do is when you come together as a tribe of people, a collective group of families that come together to do it as a nation. That's when you actually have the protections and power behind it as a body politic. You know what I mean?
Body politic, yeah. Since you brought that up real quick, I'm going to ask you this, because I had you on here before. You joined us. You know what I mean? Because y'all two, obviously had differences on certain topics before in time. You know what I mean? See how we all gentlemen now at the dinner table having this conversation in there, right? That's cool. At the same time, in this conversation, it's when you, I'm looking at the whole thing like, all right, as you did a book, and when you came on here on our podcast before, and we introduced that you promoting your book and everything you're doing, dealing with Aboriginal Indigenous law, does it have an aspect to ecclesiastical law connection to any of this situation, just off of your perspective?
Nah, I don't. The only thing that would intersect with ecclesiastical law is if you have documents like a baptism certificate.
Okay.
And if your baptism certificate had your parents' race on it.
Okay.
As an American Indian or something like that, that could be used for identification purposes, because in most states they allow you to use a baptismal certificate as a second proof of ID.
Oh, interesting you said that. That's a jewel you drop. Now, at the same time, that's the ecclesiastical. Like you said, someone born through that particular church or temple or synagogue that can issue baptismal certificates, like the Nation of Islam, who people that be born through the Nation of Islam because they were born into it, right? And then now they're baptismal from that temple, correct? And now they're underneath that nation because that's their identification, born into it, correct? Right? It's like Mormons and some of the people might call. I ain't gonna do it. I ain't gonna do it. But you see what I'm going. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Same.
You have the Native American church.
Right.
The Native American church, even though it uses the name church, it's actually a religious system that's part of developed by Native Americans. You know what I mean? So they use, as a sacrament, they use peyote and things of that nature, and they're allowed to by law. They're allowed to use it, right? So it uses the name church, but it has its own particular type of spirituality connected to it, you know.
Okay. So since I see this is going good. Wait, TurtleGang, you there, brother? Peace to you. You there? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
In this conversation of the petition and everything, as you said earlier, that your family, your genealogy, the Lenape, are the kind of the first groups that this narrative of the Hebrew Israelite came amongst them. You know what I'm saying? And how it was pushed upon them, right? Prior to them even, having any
that was just a document
them,
I
right?
could reference. That's just a document I could reference. I'm sure they referred to all the groups at different points in time. Like, I don't want to create an argument like we were the first that they called that. I'm just saying that's the first I have documented.
No, I'm not saying you saying that. No, I'm not saying you saying that. I'm just saying the document that you even referenced does play a part in the understanding that the Lenape Turtle Clan, right? You Turtle Clan, Tammany. Tammany.
No, Chief Tammany is a chief. Chief Tammany is a Wunami chief. I'm Muncie. We're different groups.
I'm sorry. My bad.
But I mean, we're all Lenape people, but we're different groups. We have different dialects and everything, different politics.
Right.
Yeah,
I do.
So Chief Tammany was a different area than me. Close, but not. No. Yeah.
But is he of the Turtle Clan? Is that correct? What they say in history about Chief Tammany being of the Turtle Clan with William Penn and all that from your narrative? But you're in the area.
The Wunami are considered the Turtle Clan. The Wunami. Okay. The Muncie, which I would be, we're considered Wolf Clan. But to understand clan systems, that would be a whole nother show to understand a clan system. You know what I mean? Like, it's so much to it. It ain't like, I'll give you an example. If you only receive your clanship through your mother, right? So if you're born into a tribe, but your mother's not from that tribe, you don't belong to that clan.
Right.
So even though your tribe is Turtle Clan, you might not be Turtle Clan because your father was Turtle. Your mother was Seneca. So even though you grow up Turtle Clan, so we have terms like I follow the ways of the turtle. So I am a Muncie who follows the ways of the turtle. See what I'm saying?
How you broke that down. Yeah, that's real. That's real. Yeah, and because the reason why I'm asking that, because William Penn, though, with Tammany, they say did a treaty with the wampum belt and the culture over there and everything, right? And that's dealing with the conversation that brings a cultural exchange of two different groups of people. And then the discrimination thing, you just brought it up earlier, like the narrative, these people are dark-skinned people on both sides. You know what I'm saying? Not saying that William Penn particularly is a dark-skinned person, but somehow or another, I want to just ask you that question. In this, because your family is, or that group of people, Iroquois in that area, dealing with the Philadelphia and everything, is connected to a mixture of people mixing and how they're being discriminated, as you have already said. So with this petition,
I'm not Iroquois. I'm not Iroquois.
And I got something else to say too, dealing with Andrew Jackson, right? Dealing with the Battle of New Orleans. Dealing with the Battle of New Orleans, which wasn't actually in New Orleans, was outside of New Orleans. It was right there in Chalmette, which is right there in the 9th Ward. What wound up happening is that the Americans in there were fighting the British, okay, because the British in them wanted the waterways, okay? It wasn't the French. It was the British, all right? So what happened is that Andrew Jackson also sent the letter to Spain to have ships to come to Louisiana to help them fight against the British. See, that's another thing that they're not talking about. And if you ever was
That's
to
true.
come down here to New Orleans, I can show you where the shit took place at, because it's right down the street from my fucking house. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that was a strategic move that he did when he actually signed with the motherfucking Spanish to fight against the British.
Okay. And you know, we will have to do another panel discussion on this, y'all, tonight. I ain't gonna hold everybody all night. I know it's one of them weekends. I thank TurtleGang for coming with us tonight. Rob, everybody, I think overall is based off this particular part of the conversation. The topics I wanted you to present are saying that they've heard of it. You've obviously presented to each, and obviously, Rob, the links in the chat. Anybody that's in the chat that hasn't heard of it, your petition is there. Ish, I'm non-biased. You feel me? I give you my real on it. You know what I mean? We got the word autonomous there, so I'm not selling for the oppressor to give me something. You get where I'm going? I sound like Malcolm when I said that, right? I'm just saying, I'm not expecting them to do something for me, but I ain't hating on the populists making acknowledgement of what's taking place within the system that we're in. You understand what I mean by that?
Yes,
You feel me?
indeed. Full agreement.
I don't want nobody to get me twisted. Right? We can't be the autonomous party if we don't put that in there. You know what I mean? That I ain't trying to be content for anything that these people that are not even acknowledging who we are in the first place to give me anything. That's why when I heard it's going to be a fight, I agree with that. Okay, this is going to, these anything they even brought up, that Paul brought up, are going to be, you know what I mean, can be brought to the table in this fight. You know what I mean? So all these narratives need to be thought of. You know what I mean? Also, the 14th Amendment citizen part, the free person, like in the freedmen, in the ADOS, who might have an issue with the fact that now people like us are acknowledging ourselves as Aboriginal, Indigenous people to the land, and making claims like this, dealing with, you know what I mean? What's going on? You already know that's a fight. You know what I mean? Even amongst our own people. Do you agree with that, Ish? That's a fight
Restoration.
amongst our own people. Right now.
Restoration is not reparations. I'm going for restoration. It's
Okay.
the difference.
I agree with you.
Also
So
have
this is
also
not
have an inherent right to the land. I don't know, if they're using terms like black is going to instantly tie you to Africa or being of African descent. So, I
you said restoration.
support them in their, in their quest.
I got you. So is the request of what's the name of it? Say the name of the society one more time that's behind this petition. Initially who you
Urban
got behind it.
the Urban Indian Heritage Society.
And they're looking for restoration, not reparations, what you're saying.
That's
Basically.
correct.
That's the terminology that should be used, you're saying. Live on this podcast, correct?
Yes, we're doing restoration, not reparations.
All right. Now it's a big claim being made, you know what I mean? It's a large account on that petition that y'all calling for. You heard me? But at the same time, bro, hey, I ain't hating no hate, bro. Misclassified, I can't say we're not. You know what I mean? I can't go like I'll be hated. That's a hated move. You know what I mean? Now how the politics works, everybody got their moves. Like how Pa I know do his thing, TurtleGang got his thing, you know what I mean? But at the same time, we acknowledge that part. We definitely have been misclassified. So as an Aboriginal people on this weekend, I ain't no hater, you know what I mean? We got to get
Yeah,
that right.
we did that prerequisite of, if you've ever been told, anybody in your family ever said, you got Indian in your family, or if you ever, if you have that documented history that you do have an Indian heritage, this is what's going to be dealing with it. If you have that, there's some elements that don't, and that's perfectly fine. We encourage people to look for their lineage no matter where it goes to. You may come and find out that you came off of this slave boat at this area. We're here to support you and help you find your lineage and to make sure that you are able to be, in your fullest self. So we're just about finding your family lineage, tying you to that, and moving out on that. In
All
this
right, so
particular film, is the misclassification.
so can I ask this for the last group? For this is my last question for the night before we get out of here. And I want to ask each of y'all on the panel this last part. Since he came, see, I segued that. See, I be playing basketball. You like I be giving me alley oops and shit. I'm come back like, you know what I mean? So in this situation, what he just said. So if there is a person in your genealogy that has a European or African outside the Aboriginal mixture we're talking about tonight that was here prior to, because of the Spanish, the French, or even the 13 colonies that are prior to the American colony that was established in 1776. In today's time, 400-500 years after that, are these people or not indigenous with their mixtures to the Americas? I want to ask each one of you that question, and then we can come around. So if I could start, because you just got to, I'm talking Ish, I'm going to go to Rob, then I'm going to TurtleGang, then Pod, then Issa, then back to Ish. So Rob, what you think about that?
Well, I think you know, a lot of people when they do start doing that genealogy are going to find different people. You know what I mean? Unless your whole family and everybody and all both sides of your family all came from one place. Because I can say for myself, my family is spread out. You know what I mean? As a matter of fact, I know my great grandmother is a white woman. I know her. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's like you're gonna find. I think you're gonna find a lot of things, you know, but you do have to have that genealogy, that lineage check, because even if they was talking about ADOS, they ain't getting nothing until you can prove that you were from slaves for real. A lot of these people calling themselves descendants of slaves, and they folks weren't even slaves. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
Everybody's gonna have to do your lineage check to really get to who you really are, and you may find a foreign group of folks, and you probably gonna find some, you know, indigenous people. I don't think it's nothing to be ashamed of. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it's anything wrong with that. You know, you are who you are. You know what I mean? How you gonna be mad about that?
I am who I am,
You
right.
know?
Yeah.
But for the people with actual indigenous lineage, you know, with actual indigenous lineage, there's a lot. We're owed a lot. I'll just say like that. They'll never be able to pay the right tab. But hey man, it's time to start running the tab up though. You know. So it's almost definitely down. As a matter of fact, like I said earlier, when I saw that on your group, I guess it was like a month or two ago, I automatically put it up on my page like, yo, support Ish. You know what I mean? Yo, I'm
Yo,
down with it. You know what I mean? I love
I,
it.
I
Hey,
appreciate that, brother. We truly
from
do.
day
We got.
one, autonomous party, same thing I told you, bro.
All right,
We
man. Listen,
appreciate
man.
that.
Hey, I'm a Malcolm in this situation. I'm not
Uh,
gonna ever go against the brother and what he's doing to get us recognized. I just have my autonomy. Like I heard Issa say about the move that he's talking about. I think that's the move better suited for us to really get the full autonomy. You know what I mean? The recognition within the system is one thing. You know what I mean? But the autonomy is another
right.
thing, in my opinion. And restoration, in my opinion, is going to be tied to our autonomous move within our own networks of what we're doing to really get that full assessment. I think both sides work if you're using this will of autonomy to get in these situations to do what you need to do on behalf of who you say you are. And self-determination comes involved with that. So just if you think you're just going to get it politically by voting, like how people have been voting for Trump in different situations and different, I mean, if we argue about within the system right now, then I think we're waiting. And if we're waiting, we're not doing. And if we're not moving and thinking governmental in that manner on a national level amongst our self-identified people today with our networks in different regions, then goddamn it, what we doing? That's my move on that. You know what I mean? But I'm not again hating on anybody that's trying to recognize their genealogy from being discriminated on who their real nationalities are. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, shit.
It's my
I mean,
turn.
just to put that out there. No, wait, no, it's a turn. No, wait, I'm skipping. It's turtle time. Turtle. What you thought about that part?
Can you just rephrase the
Rephrase the
question
question.
again? Yeah, let me
Yeah,
just
my
hear it
fault.
one
I'm
more time.
sorry.
Trying to
All
be
right. So
specific.
when it comes to the 15th century of European and what they call African people that might have migrated here to wherever situations and mixed in with the Aboriginal cultures of the Americas, but prior to 1776, meaning before the American colonies got their independence and did their own thing
Mhm.
from the 13 colonies. You know what I mean? Are these people now with their mixtures, Creole, hybrid, mulatto
Mhm.
people living in these different areas of free people of color narratives, are they not indigenous to America today based off how long they've been here and the cultures they're mixed with?
All
Your
right.
opinion?
So, okay. So, all right. So when we're talking about indigenous nations, right? everyone from that nation may not be of indigenous ancestry. We're talking about a nation or communities, right? So you're going to have different genetics coming in and out of those communities because that's just life, right? So this is why we got to get away from the European blood quorum. That's what determines who you are. Because in these indigenous communities that we all are trying to connect back with, what made you a part of the community wasn't whether or not you just had the blood in it, but did you partake in the culture? Did you live in the community? Right? So these are the things that for my people, what would make you Lenape wouldn't just be your bloodline. Like what makes me a New Yorker ain't just be like, because I live here. And anybody that comes and lives here, after 30, 40 years, after you get into the culture, you're going to be a New Yorker too. And everything that is available to me is going to be available to you. So rather than get caught up in the different ancestries that make us, people need to start using genealogy to pinpoint the communities you came from, because those communities will reflect a greater community. So when we start tracing ourselves back, yeah, you do your family history, but your family history is going to tie you to a community, right? It might be called a homestead in your old family writings. What's the old family homestead? That's going to be the last place where your family was like a nuclear group. When you can get back to that, you can attach yourself to the greater community, which would be the nation, right? So in the process of gaining our power back, we need to be taking care of every step. So the initial step is to galvanize your family, re-educate your family, put your family in a position to where they are recognized and identified as who they are properly, right? And then create some wealth. Once you do these things, like what Ish is doing to get people recognized, I applaud that. My family and myself, we've made tremendous historical contributions to our community, to Red Bank, New Jersey, to Monmouth County, historical. So we're going to stand on that and go to the people and say, we need some plaques on these walls. We need some things to recognize that our people helped build these places. That church, that church, that church, that church, that hall, this. We built these things. The ground, the roads, we paved them. My grandfathers paved them. We need that to be documented in town history. Oh, and we Lenape. See what I'm saying?
That's real.
So now we're establishing ourselves in our communities, reestablishing ourselves in our communities. We're also doing things to create businesses, to create wealth. Now, as we continue to grow all our families, then we in a position to now reunite as nations. And we're not coming back as beggar nations. Now we're coming back as nations that are empowered. And that's how we can start putting ourselves on an equal footing with the United States. We don't have to get rid of the United States. We got to get equal to them so we can do business with them fairly. We suffer because we have not been able to do business with them fairly because we've been stripped of our national identity, which gives us the ability to deal with them fairly. So as individuals, we got to build ourselves up. So getting recognition, if you can get reparations, whatever you can get to build your family up is a part of it. Once you do that, you move to the next step. And so I applaud what's going on. I applaud everybody playing their role, you know what I mean? But yeah, these are the things that need to be done. I don't know if I answered the question.
No, you did. You did, actually. For me, I think you hit a lot of different angles. I feel the same way you feel. I really, sentimentally, if I might disagree with you on different things on Facebook, I'll tell you tonight, I agree with what you just said wholeheartedly. Like, that's the aspect of it. You know what I mean? I think we have the different levels of it. And if it's different, like, I mean, you doing what you do in your area, plus you look at the biggest, you know what I mean, the micro, macro. And then we got to look at all the steps. And that's how it's going to work for us to network and build wealth within our nationalities, human rights, and different things like that. So I appreciate your aspect on that. And Issa, what you thought before we slide to Chito?
Yeah, there's a lot of different points that everybody's been hitting on. As far as indigenous international law says, anybody who was here before the colonizers came here, you're indigenous. That would include anyone who even was kidnapped and put in slavery before 1776. Florida didn't become part of the United States until I think it was 1850 or 1843, somewhere around there. Florida wasn't part of the United States; it was a recent thing. So that's another dimension to it. As far as what Brother Ish was saying regarding Andrew Jackson, he was an illegitimate president according to their constitution. He wasn't supposed to be president. He was a foreigner. Add on to what TurtleGang was saying, that goes into a whole discussion whether or not you're seeking to be a federally recognized tribe, state recognized tribe, the steps to go about doing that, or if you want to just be an internationally recognized tribe. One of the tribes out there in North Carolina, I think it's the Lumbee tribe. They've been going back and forth with the BI for over 100 years, but they decided, as the current circumstances, they've been doing their own thing as the Lumbee tribe. You know what I mean? So,
there's many groups like that.
Exactly. So, it like he said, your individual self, your family, and tribes are made up of families, different clans that came together. They form a tribe and form a nation. One of the things I got to add, just a clarification on some things, is a lot of these tribes that are federally recognized now, these tribes, these are like corporate entities. You know what I mean? They became corporations per se to conduct business affairs for their tribe. And a lot of them tribes, they set up their own rules for membership. So I'm gonna give you an example. What TurtleGang was saying. He said it's not just bloodline per se, but also you could be adopted into a tribe. Some tribes do that because you live amongst them, you adopted the culture, the ways, may be married in. But another thing is when you're dealing with a lot of these tribes, I'm gonna give you a perfect example. The Muskogee Creek Nation of Oklahoma. Muskogee Creek Nation, Oklahoma, the history is very deep because there was a civil war within the Muskogee Creek Nation of Oklahoma. Between Upper Creeks and the Lower Creeks. They got down with the Civil War. Each one chose a side. In 1866, when they signed the treaty, they brought back the Lower Creeks back into the Creek Nation, right? What you saw happen in after 1865 with the freed slaves, what they call the freed slaves in 1865, Emancipation Proclamation, Reconstruction, then Jim Crow era, you have a similar set of circumstances that happened with the Creek Nation as well, when after the 1866 treaty, they established a constitution that reflected the American Constitution, United States Constitution, and then they opted to add an amendment to go back and verify. They use the words verify who was already on those lists of people as members of the tribe. 100 years later, in 1979, they kicked out who they call the freedmen, and they based it off what they call the Dawes Roll. I say all this to say that today, there's people who are blood descendants of the Creeks, blood descendants on record. But because the way they established their tribal operations, they don't, unless you put an application in and be a member of that tribe, they won't recognize you as a member of that tribe, even though your whole family came from that tribe on record.
That's real. That's real.
Yeah.
And living maroon, exiled on their own land, by the way.
Can I add something to that?
As Ish is pointing out. Go ahead.
Okay, so that's absolutely true. Like what I think people need to start understanding is that putting that focus on any tribe that has a Dawes Roll means that they signed an agreement with the United States government. So what you're looking at is a sinking ship. Why anybody would want to get on it, I don't understand. And it's rigged. It's rigged. That's what the blood quorum was about. It was rigging it so that they could breed the native out of you, right? That's why they kept setting it up, because they knew in generations this child was going to go from being full-blooded, as they would say, to 1/8. And at a certain point, now they're no longer that. So now all the laws don't apply. So that's booby trap. Like, people keep thinking, oh, I found my family's name on the door. And here's another thing. I don't know about y'all family, but my grandmother had 16 kids, right? Those 16 kids had their own distinct families. We're all family,
That's how a tree works.
right? But or even better yet, my grandfather didn't get along with his brother. My grandfather had, like I said, him and my grandmother had 16 kids. His brother had 12 kids. We didn't get along for years because those two didn't get along. Whatever agreement my grandfather would have signed would have only covered his direct descendants.
Facts.
The other ones wouldn't have. So when you got Cherokee, when you got these different, they say the 5 civilized tribes. No, those were specific family groups from those tribes who made agreements. And guess what? If that shit ain't hanging on your wall and you're not still living in a reservation and you're not still actively in that, you probably never was a part of it. Even if your ancestors' names appeared on it, because many of the ancestors said, I ain't moving out there. I'm going to stay where I'm at. So now you could look up your stuff on the list and say, there go my great-great-great-grandfather. Yeah, but he didn't accept the deal. So he can't, y'all not covered. Right?
You ain't in the contract.
Yeah, you ain't in the contract. And then in the contract and you fall out of it for 2 generations, they don't have to grant it to you. Now, this is what it's really all about. Federally recognized nations are only about money. The only difference between a federally recognized nation and a non-fed is that the federally recognized nations get money. So if they're allotted money, right? Not casino money where they generate it. They're allotted money. If they're allotted money and if there's 1,000 of them and they get $1 million, they don't need 20,000 motherfuckers. They want to keep that 1,000. This shit is only about money. Like the federally, they're not any more Indian than anyone else. They're just the group that agreed. And the ones that agreed, they moved out west and they sat them around a bunch of white people. And now they look European. And half of them on those reservations don't even get checks. Don't get it fucked up. Because a lot of them have bled out, meaning that they're more European than they are native. And based on their laws, they don't even get checks. This shit is not what people think. Like they need to stop thinking that these doors list was something that you want to find yourself on.
And you know what? I was about to look. I was gonna bring it home right after that because I'm the last one, right? But the thing is, yeah, I'm the last one on this one. And see, what most people don't understand is that those treaties that was done in the 1865, right, after the so-called Civil War, right. What most people don't know that those treaties was called the Reconstruction treaties that was done by Albert Pike. Okay, that's what most people don't know. And if you know about General Albert Pike, you know that he was also a 33rd degree Mason, and he was also the Grand Commander of the Confederate Army. Okay, so dealing with that, with the 5 civilized tribes, right? What most people don't understand is that those Indians that signed the treaties were not pale faced. They looked just like you and I in the 1865. They didn't become whitewashed until the 1890s. That's when they became whitewashed. Right? So now you got to look at it. So now, not only did you have the Dawes rolls, but you had about 6 other rolls that was after that, like the Miller's roll and many others, etc. You know what I'm saying? So dealing with that, once again, just like Cousin Norris had said, that basically is hush money dealing with the BIA, which nothing but the Federal War Department. You know, that's what the Department of the Bureau of Indian Affairs was nothing but the War Department. You see, and they was the ones that actually allotted the land, because after that they was the ones that took the land and put it in the trust, and now those Indian lands became known as fucking national parks. Oh, did I say something? Did I say something?
Stop there. We're gonna leave right there. Time out. All right, so look. Hey, I appreciate it for vibing with us tonight. You heard me. We over the time limit, you know what I'm saying? Join us for our next Aboriginal discussion with all our different guests that comes and vibe with us. You heard? We're gonna drop some more things. I mean, I think you need to tap into each one of these members that joined us tonight and what they've been doing in their regional areas. And at the same time, don't hate. If you don't participate, be quiet and just do your thizzle. You know what I mean? If not, push and evolve and promote whatever you see going on between these different individuals and their collectives, and hey, keep it moving. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not the time to hate, as I heard in the beginning, even with Malcolm saying African, right? He said some shit, right? That's why I started with him, because even though we're not saying African today, we could have our different perspectives, but still be knowing what we got to do for the misclassified thing that we all have in common. You know what I mean? So when people are doing what they're doing, if it's different narratives of how they're going about it, we still shouldn't be fighting about it. We should be unifying about it. And on an
Oh,
indigenous people holiday type of vibe. You heard me? You know what I mean?
oh,
Shout out to
I
all
want
the
to say one more
Aboriginal
thing.
Maroon people.
I want to say one more thing about the trading
Yeah.
expeditions. We actually had canoes that we had dug out that was 100 yards.
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah,
I heard
we
about
had
that.
canoes that was 100 yards, and we bought things over to Africa and bought things from Africa back over here. And not only did we trade food, but we trade by fucking as well. So,
Lord.
yeah. That
Hey,
wasn't the only
don't get
thing that
into
was
that.
being traded.
Look, don't get into that shit, because you gonna spin some stuff. They're gonna say you on some freaky deaky. You heard what they was doing with the voting fucking thing, right? That voting fucking thing, and people was mad at Kanye West about the white lives matter, but we ain't mad about the voting and fucking thing. Don't get me started tonight. I ain't got time. We gotta go. I'm gonna see y'all. Tap in with us each and every
Y'all
Sunday.
have a
You
good
heard
one,
me? I ain't
y'all.
got time. No, I appreciate y'all
Fuck
for
with your
real.
boy,
Thank y'all
man.
for
Fuck with
vibing
your
with me
boy. I
tonight,
holler
man.
at you.
Thank y'all for all the panel guests. You know what I mean? Everybody in the chat, you know what I'm saying? Each and every Sunday, 8 to 11 o'clock, we went over tonight. It's a special edition. And all the guests that came here, and TurtleGang, once again, I think we clear up things when we get to talk, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's what the narrative be about. I agree with a lot of things you're saying, brother. And I preach to you and your family what y'all got going on. And at the same time, the Moorish thing is what, in the Hebrew thing, I ain't knocking any of those mixtures that came in any of the situations that happened, right? Even if the European situation happened, right? But the Aboriginal thing leads. So that can't be whitewashed by our own people now, knowing that all these different people are colored people, but still have their cultures and respect each culture and the diversity of their mixtures, how they came in. And as Issa, I think, said, they would be indigenous based off of law between if you were here before 1776. You know what I mean? And if anybody can go against that part, if we can all agree with that part, then we got more in common than we think in the 21st century, rather than fight in the 21st century over these things. Did anybody disagree with that before we leave?
I want to thank everybody for participating and just coming in the right spirit and sharing their perspective. It's always good to be able to learn the nuances of what goes on within the other tribes, and I just want to thank everybody for sharing their information. I learned a lot, so thank you, each and every one of y'all.
Peace.
Same here. I
Peace,
appreciate
peace.
everybody.
Absolutely.
Turtle?
Thank you for having me tonight. It was a pleasure, brother. I didn't mean to rush up on you, you know what I mean? But I definitely want to be a part of the conversation. And I said thank you for having me, bro.
I appreciate you. I'm gonna reach out to you.
Yeah,
Hey,
good addition.
Pa,
Thank you for joining us, brother.
what's up, man? Before you slide, you in the zoo, you in
Man,
the
look,
jungle.
you know me. I put it in a peace pipe. You heard me?
Put it in there, then. Do what you
I
gotta
put
do.
it in
You
a
heard me?
peace pipe. Cause motherfucker don't want to
Yeah.
see that axe in that tree. Leave that part alone.
Lord, red
Good to
sticking them,
see you
huh?
again, brother Chito. I haven't seen you in a while,
Red
but it's good
sticking
to
them.
see you, family. Peace and blessings.
Listen,
Likewise,
man.
likewise. Same to you, man.
Listen. What's up with you?
Restorative justice, man. Everybody whose family's from here, you have equity in the land. You're owed restorative justice, man. That's all I got to say. Peace. Thanks for
Real
everybody
talk.
being here. Thanks for having me part of the conversation.
I appreciate everybody. I'm gonna bring y'all back. I'm gonna invite y'all all back when we do another discussion, and we have different topics that we can bring our sources. If you have sources, you want to present them. We're gonna be open about it, non-biased. I don't want an echo chamber. I want everybody from the different cultures to put in, because this is a culture exchange right now in the 21st century, and that's how it's gonna allow us to be autonomous. You know what I mean? Because we're all in different
Mm-hmm.
areas and we're coming from different perspectives, but we understand this in common, and that's why I love this kind of conversation tonight, y'all. So peace, love, and
Man, I
happiness, as
want,
they
I
would
want,
say
I
it.
want to see the
Peace.
Confederation. I want to see the Confederation get back together.
Okay,
Get
now you
those nations
talking.
from under. Because a matter of fact, dealing with the United States. Man, look,
Don't get
this the
started,
weekend
Pa.
for me.
Pa,
It's the weakest for me. You know me, because in the Constitution, because you know.
Don't get started,
Oh
Paul.
shit.
Paul. Don't do it. Leave it alone.
Thank you,
Leave it
brother
alone
All
Mac.
right,
tonight,
we
man.
gonna
Peace,
save
y'all.
it. We gonna save it for next
All right,
time. We
man.
gonna save
Next
it for
time.
part
Next
two.
time,
Come
bro.
back for part two.
Peace, y'all.
All right.
All right, y'all. Y'all have a good night.
All right.
Tap in
Oh,
with
y'all
us
have a
next
good
week.
All
one,
right,
man.
brother.
Sunday. You
All right,
already
Peace,
know
one.
what it
fellas.
is. Peace,
Peace.
y'all. Through the campaign. The harsh
Yes.
reality is live life always. And the autonomous way, you heard me. The harsh reality is live life autonomously. You know what I mean? It's been a good night. And we out of here. Check us next week. We got a long week. A couple weeks with October. So tap in with us, you know what I mean? Check out what we got going on. Peace and love.